you searching for the best in online black radio? Then go to blacktalkradionetwork.com, helping you filter through the noise. Real talk, black talk.
So very long, waiting on you to come. Done everything I was told to do, neglected my common sense, waiting on you. Been burned, been away, and I've been hung. There ain't nothing under the sun my oppressor ain't done. Been sprayed by a hose, been beat by dogs, thrown in a padlock and it tied like horns. I'm at the end of my wits. It seems I can't win. So crack of Jesus, where the hell you been? 500 years I've been waiting on you. Crack of Jesus, we need a word from you. Calling your name again and again. Crack of Jesus, where the hell you been?
I've tried so hard to be just like them, been miseducated too much. I walk and talk just like them, got promoted on the job, thought I had made it, but what the cracker giveth, the cracker also taketh. Now my car is gone and now my home is too. I can't see straight cause these bills are due. To deserve this, don't know what I did. Couldn't be convinced that white boy was my friend. I'm at the end of my wits. It seems I can't win. So crack of Jesus, where the hell you been? 500 years I've been waiting on you. Crack of Jesus, I need to hear a word from you. Calling on your name, Lord, again and again. Crack of Jesus, where the hell you been? Oh, how I wish I knew my African self, of how my native land holds so much wealth, and all that wealth is embedded in me. That's what these white folks done stole from me.
Morning star,
context of white supremacy, Gus T Renegade.Is, in for another program, hopefully to share constructive information on the system of white supremacy. Today's date, Sunday, January 1st, 2012. No confetti, no champagne, no celebrations, because we are still on the plantation. The song that we began with, Brothers Keeper, they've been a guest on the program. The title of that track, Where, from their album Revolutionary Reconstruction. Revolutionary Reconstruction, Brothers Keeper, out of Memphis, Tennessee. Very excited about this program and the topic, the seventh area of people activity, religion, very important. We've been praying to conclude broadcasts of late, and really excited about having our guest to come on and share his views about how black people can utilize religion to combat the system of white supremacy. Our guest, he's been with us twice before. He is the founder of Nubian Directions. You can get more information about their work at NubianDirections.com. It should be linked in the description. NubianDirections.com. He's also the author of Towards the Destruction of a Nigger Mentality. Always a pleasure to have him on the broadcast to hear his views. Our guest for the evening, Mr. C.C. Blackman. Mr. Blackman, are you with us?
Yes, I am, Brother Gus.
Thank you so much for coming back to chat with us again. As I said, always enjoy hearing your views on how we can go about solving the problem of white supremacy. For any of our listeners, if this is their first time tuning in and hearing you, you can give us a little background information so we know a little bit more about who you are before we get started.
Well, basically, I'm an activist out of the Harlem community. I'm a serious Pan-Africanist and a black nationalist. I'm dedicated to building institutions from the family to schools and businesses, anything that will help our people gain a foothold in terms of being able to control our lives and being able to control our destinies. I spent a lot of time studying with a number of individuals in New York. We have a little think tank that's dedicated to helping us, move beyond some of the obstacles imposed on us by this system of global white supremacy.
NubianDirections.com. NubianDirections.com. I wanted to have this program, as I said, focusing on religion. I think it's very important because, and I've been in this book myself, many black people, they become less confused about the fact that we are on the plantation, and they see that white people have corrupted, infected all of the religions on the planet, and in fact, the number one religion on the planet is the religion of white supremacy. And they respond to that by saying, I'm done. I'm done with the church. I'm done with our religion. And I feel like it can compromise, and often has compromised, our relationship to the Creator. Can you kind of talk about that experience where a lot of non-white people end up distancing themselves from religion?
Well, what happens is that as you study history, you come to the undeniable conclusion that religion has been a tool used against us by various cultures and different peoples to gain a dominant position over African people. Whether you look at the 1,000-year history of enslavement of Africans by Arabs prior to the revelation of Muhammad, and then you look at the horrible history of Christendom as it relates to Africans, it becomes very clear that religion has been used as a military tool by our enemies to give us justification to be passive while they steal our resources, torture us, and relegate us to the lowest levels of society, abuse us, and enslave us. So it's difficult to justify being a follower of religion, not just in the past, but even today. You can see all the obvious earmarks of how religion is being used as a system of mind control to continue the dominance and control over black people and to continue our oppression. Which leads to many of us seeking a divorce with religion. I think that there's so many wonderful things that are taught by religious principles, and I think where we fall where we make our mistake is that we don't draw the distinction between spirituality and religion. Religion, in my view, is just a path to spirituality. The real achievement is the connection with the divine spirit or the divine force that we call the Creator, God, Allah, whoever it is. But there are many different paths to get there. Whichever path you may choose, the goal is always the same, that spiritual connection that elevates the human being from being just a physical creature or animalistic creature to a spiritual being that is capable of sublime thoughts as it relates to the total experience of existence, as opposed to just being, somebody that just eats, and deals with mundane appetites and drives. So man's spirituality, I think, is very essential, and no people, in my view, are more spiritually inclined than African people. That's why it's so difficult for us to make the break from religion, but it's impossible for us to really make genuine progress without being honest about what the history of religions have been in our African experience. For example, if you look at the greatest forced migration in the history of the world, which was the enslavement of Africans through the triangular slave trade, we look at a people who were overwhelmingly a non-Christian people. Yet, when they're brought into the Western Hemisphere, in the islands, in South America, in the United States, you find today that we're overwhelmingly a Christian people, and it's very difficult to justify this turn of events and reconcile that with the fact that the very people who brought us over here, be it whether they were Portuguese, the Spanish, the French, the English, all of these enslavers profess to be followers of the very same religion. So when you look at the barbarity and you look at the cruelty and you look at the harshness of our treatment, not only then but even today, it's very difficult to justify Christianity as a religion that has the ability to end one of the most essential problems on the planet, which is global white supremacy. In fact, part of the problem is that most Europeans look at white supremacy and Christianity as being one and the same. They don't even find it necessary to believe in the principles. They understand the necessity of it because it promotes all things white. It promotes a white aesthetic. It gives a subtle justification for white domination of the world, in that the very incarnation of God was the Michelangelo white Jesus. So when Africans look at that in the bright light of truth, it is very, very difficult for them to justify their position as Christians. And Islam is not much better. I'm only going to mention Islam and Christianity because these are the religions we tend to be mostly involved with. Islam is pretty similar in the sense that while the religion, or if you read the Quran, it may condemn racism, the fact of the matter is racism is a very, very popular form of behavior. It was something Arabs practiced prior to the coming of Muhammad. If you look at the history of Bilal, the first muezzin or caller of prayer in Islam, he was an enslaved Ethiopian. If you look at what's going on today in Libya and the persecution and murder of Africans on the basis of racism, it's very, very difficult to justify the attitude that we're part of this great melting pot of global Muslims and racism is not a part of that. So when African people look to religions, we have to be very, very careful to separate the idea of spirituality from religion, and to also separate the idea of the reality of global white supremacy and racism from the practice of religion, because religion is very much involved in our subjugation as a people.
Undeniable. For clarity, as we proceed with the dialogue, can you give us your definition of the term religion and your definition of the term spiritual or spirituality?
Well, if you start with spirituality, spirituality is an innate proclivity, an innate desire to seek out a connection with the infinite being that created the heavens and the earth. It's something that is native to most individuals. It is a spirit that is very active in African people. we need to be connected to the Creator. That's when we find our highest happiness. If you look at African people across the board, all over the world, wherever you find us, we are church builders. I say church to build, meaning a religious institution builders. If you do a Google search and try to determine what people are most religiously inclined, there is no doubt that even in the midst of our not even participating in organized religious practice, you will find more believers in the Creator among African people than any other people. This is one of the reasons why it's very difficult to bring any message to us that's not brought by some form of a preacher. If you look at all our leaders historically, they've always, from Nat Turner, whether it's Jesse Jackson, whether it's Martin Luther King, whether it's Minister Farrakhan, it's always somebody coming to us from a pulpit claiming to be a follower or an adherent to some religion. Now, that is because we know that the religion or spirituality or the connection to God is something that is deeply entrenched in a sense of meaningfulness for Africans. It may not be as prominent in other people, but if you look at us juxtaposed to Europeans, for example, Europeans tend to build more banks and tend to build more institutions that deal with the accumulation of business or money, while if you go into any black community, what you find is a plethora of churches. I live in Brooklyn. Brooklyn is almost church land. I mean, there's so many churches all over the place. You wouldn't know it from the behavior of the people, but they're not being necessarily corrupted because they don't believe. They're being corrupted because of social, psychological, and influential mechanisms that come at them on a regular basis are designed to rob them of their real morality and real spirituality. But you'd be hard-pressed to find any large group of African people who are, for example, atheists or even agnostics. It's becoming more popular, but it still hasn't really got to a point where we have discarded religion, and I don't think that we really should disregard religion. Now, when I define religion, I'm talking about that path, that established path that one may walk to build the connection, or I call it a bridge to spirituality. You know, the connection with the Creator, which is spirituality, which is innate in individuals. If you never knew of any organized religion, you might develop your own principles for living that are very similar to the Golden Rule, or wanting for your brother what you want for yourself, or any of these primary premises in religion. You might develop that naturally and instinctively, because I think that it's man's nature naturally, especially African peoples, it's our nature to naturally be, civilized in that way. What it is that because religion is a bridge to spirituality, it's something that you walk over to go into the promised land, so to speak, of spirituality. There are many different ways to get there. So if, for example, one wanted to get to Chicago, and if you lived in Minnesota, you would go south. If you lived in Dallas, you would go north. If you lived in New York, you would go west. And if you lived in Los Angeles, you would go east. You took 4 different directions to get to the same thing. And what our people have to learn is that it doesn't matter what path a person gets to achieve a certain degree of ethics or to have a certain sense of connectedness with the Creator. We shouldn't argue over that. What we should be arguing over is the fact that we should be ethical, especially in the way that we relate to each other, and that whatever spiritual path we walk, it should not be something that is being used to divert us from the natural problems that we are experiencing on this planet. For example, if you look at our inability to organize, our inability to control our communities, our inability to control our families, our inabilities to stop being a subordinate and subservient people to Europeans, a lot of that is rooted in the fact that we have overemphasized this argument about what path one takes to get to spirituality, instead of really realizing that part of the path to spirituality is that you undergo an enlightenment. And the enlightenment is that you have to resolve your earthly problems in a spiritual way. And we have not addressed our earthly problems as African people, because most of our paths to spirituality, when it comes down to us seeking what we need the most as a people, which is justice, most of those religions have been interpreted for us by our historical enemies And thus, we can never really get the kind of messages that make us stand up and do the things that we need to do for our people. So, to be clear, spirituality is the connection with the divine, whether you call them Allah, Jehovah, Jesus, whatever the case may be, or just God or the Creator, whatever the case may be. And religion is the path that you take to that.
Okay. I think, throwing this out, I suspect that we are in agreement. I think one of the major reasons that so many black people have abandoned the church and really weakened our spiritual connection is because religion, what should be the bridge to spirituality, white people have corrupted that, and religion, I would say worldwide, religion is the bridge to white supremacy and a mindset, a way of thinking about the world that will condition black people, non-white people to accept and work in the best interest of racist man and racist woman. I think that, unfortunately, is what that bridge has been to under white supremacy, not the creator, but white supremacy. I think, are we in agreement on that, Mr. Blackman?
There's no question. Religion is a control system for the most part. It's a control system utilized particularly effectively by various power structures. All governments, love religion because religion keeps the people from heading to the street when there's injustice. And religion makes these grandiose promises of pie in the sky after you die, and the meek shall inherit the earth. And all of that is true because in exchange for your meekness, you do get your 6 feet under. But the bottom line, if you're looking for justice on this planet, you are never going to work to achieve that because somebody has promised you pie in the sky after you die. So you suffer in silence and you remain humble and you render unto Caesar until it eventually kills you and keeps you living in a deplorable condition and keeps you suffering as a race of people. And that's what's happening with us, and that's been our relationship with religion.
Context of white supremacy, Mr. C. Blackman. You took the words right out of my mouth. I had them on the page. We had one of our previous guests, Brother Polite, and he was talking about economic information that black people could use. And he was saying, he also in the New York area, and he said, with black people, we have a church on every corner. We are the most spiritual people, praying, the hymns, singing, preaching, invest a ton of time and energy in that. Church on every corner, no banks. And he said if you go into the white dominators neighborhood, it's the exact opposite. They have a bank on every corner, no churches. What would you say to a non-white person who says, hey, I've been to church, I spent the first 18 years of my life in church, white Jesus out the yin-yang, I'm done with that. I'm just not interested in that. I don't think religion is going to aid us in dealing with the number one problem in the universe, white supremacy. What would your response be?
Well, my response is that, typically the problem all over the African world is that the African mind does not work to solve African problems. Part of being a subordinate people, a footstool people, as Marcus Garvey described us, is in trying to wake us up, he called us a footstool people because people step on us for their own advancement. My take on religion is that religion typically is the best hiding place for a cowardly people. If you never really want to stand up and face oppression, all you have to do is hide in all of the various platitudes and all the various, appeals to patience and pie in the sky after you die and kindness and gentleness, and so that you don't ward off the oppression. Now, if you take a look at something was said in the 80s, Desmond Tutu said that when the white man arrived in South Africa, we had all the diamonds, and they had all the Bibles. But today they have all the Bibles, they have all the diamonds, and we have all the Bibles. This is the game that's been played on African people. So when a person says to me that they've grown up in the church or the mosque and they're tired because they see the hypocrisy and they see the foolishness that's really going on, I always say to them that if you took any of these religions and you applied them with the thinking with the African mind, you might get somewhere. Let's take a look at Dr. King. You take a look at a guy like Martin Luther King, who is unique among black preachers in the sense that he is a guy who said, I want to address the social conditions of my people, and I want to do this as a Christian. This man had a monumental effect in terms of addressing a real problem, which is the legal subordination of Africans in this country. He did a lot in terms of that problem. Whether we agree with his philosophy or not, he is definitely a warrior for his people. They would definitely have not killed him unless he would speak in some level of truth to power. So we revere him as an ancestor, and the fact that he was able to utilize religious principles to give him the courage to stand up shows that if you apply religious thinking with an African mind instead of a European trained mind, you might be able to get somewhere. You can do the same thing with Islam or any other religion. The problem is our reluctance. If you look at the mega preachers today that we have, the Creflo Dollars, all these big preachers, all of these prosperity preachers, they never really talk about the historical injustices wreaked upon African people. They never really talk about trying to deal with white supremacy or trying to raise any of these issues because they know that's not commercially viable for them. And they know that most people who come to religion are mostly afraid. Nobody wants to die and deal with the reality that, they want some kind of, message that is going to allow them to feel that they are going to go on to some kind of prosperity in heaven. But the truth is most religious people, in my view, are going straight to hell, and they're going to hell for the following reason. Oftentimes when I'm on the street, I'm confronted by various people from various religions, and I have my own spiritual and religious beliefs, but I don't think it's really relevant. I'm not really here to promote or advance any religious thinking. I am here to advance spiritual thinking and say that people should be using spirituality to wake themselves up and to find the courage to face the real problems that they have as a people. But typically, I might get a person who might walk up to me and say, I have a question for you. Do you know where your soul is going to spend eternity? And I tell them, yes, I know where my soul is going to spend eternity. I said, my soul is going to spend eternity in bliss, where in all likelihood you might be headed to hell. And they say, wow, that's a very harsh thing for you to say to me. And I say, the reason why I believe you're going to hell is because if you believe in the final day or the day of judgment, to me a logical question that God may ask of any human being is, what was your condition on planet Earth? And our people would have to answer honestly that we were born into a world that was sick with racism, sick with global white supremacy, sick with the oppression of African people. And then the Creator might logically ask, well, what did you do about that oppression? And many of us will answer that on a weekly basis I sent Creflo Dollar or Joe Osteen or whatever preacher I had some money. And then God is going to say, but what did you do about the oppression of your people? What did you do about the racism? And that's where we fall short, because the Creator will also follow up and ask you, did you have any children? And for most of us, the answer will be yes. And then the question will be put to you, well, you mean to tell me that you really did nothing to do anything about this racism, but at the same time you brought children in the world, and when you brought these children in the world to experience the very same racism and the very same victimization that global white supremacy produces, that makes you, in fact, worthy of hell, because you did nothing in the face of oppression. The human being must stand up and address his real problems in order to be viewed as dignified. So when we get disrespected by other races, I totally understand it. They don't see any cohesion or unity. They don't see any attempt to stand up to real oppression. In fact, when you travel overseas, the view of us 30 or 40 years ago was much better than it is today, because they saw us on the international scene as a people that were standing up to the injustices of racism in this country. But today, they see us as a bunch of slackers, especially when these foreigners have the opportunity to come over here and find that our entire community is dominated, the business space is dominated by foreigners. When they see our kids killing each other in the street because of the messages that they're receiving from our music industry, which has been hijacked by white folks to destroy us. So these are the things that cause a great deal of frustration with religion, and I say that it's not so much that you have a religion, the problem is that you're still not responding to your natural problems. Your natural problems is you must deal with the creation of, you must create something to counter the oppression that you're experiencing. And that's the only way anybody's going to have any love or respect for you. Chinese, Asians, Russians, anybody will look at us with great respect if we stand up and do the things we can to throw off the yokes of oppression. And part of that is global white supremacy. It may not be a problem for others, but it is a problem for us, and we have to deal with it.
Context of white supremacy. I believe Justice has some questions as well. I will give out the number really quick, but before I do, that just reminded me of what Dr. Frances Cress Welsing says consistently: the highest form of spirituality is self-respect.
Absolutely.
She inverts it. I will give it the way she normally says it. Self-respect is the highest form of spirituality. Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, author of the ISIS Papers. If you want to dial in, if you have questions for Mr. Blackman, the number to dial 760-569-7676, and the code is 564-943.
This conference is being recorded.
If you have questions, or excuse me, Justice, if you have some questions you would like to ask Mr. Blackman, your line should be open. Please proceed.
Greetings, Mr. Blackman.
Greetings, Sister Justice.
What is the name or title of your religion? And please describe what your religion requires you to do and not to do.
Well, I think you're speaking about the church that I told the brother that I was founding. The name of the church is going to be the First True Church of African Redemption. That's the First True Church of African Redemption. And our religion is the liberation of our people. The message is that the Creator has tapped me on the shoulder and said that if you are sick of the injustice, don't just look to me to solve the problem, but you be that instrument of justice, and you gather your people, and you give them this message, and you tell them that your church is not here to establish a religion that they are is in competition with any other religion out there. In fact, our church is a supplemental church. We need something more than sitting in the church on Sunday, on the mosque on Friday, or in the synagogue on Saturday talking about spiritual principles. Our situation is extra, so African people must have an extra approach. We need a place where we can come together with the solemnity that takes place in a church environment and dedicate ourselves on a spiritual level to extricating getting from under the foot of oppression. That's what we should be talking about. And since the churches refuse to do this, and since the mosques refuse to do this, and since the synagogues refuse to do this, in fact, a lot of times when our people go to these particular religions, they have to divorce themselves from the struggle of their people. And that's my primary objection to established religion as it affects black people. We have to divorce ourselves from our very blackness, and we have to take these fantasy ideas that there's some kind of religious melting pot where white Christians and black Christians are all united in their love for Jesus Christ, but it never really manifests in any real benefits to you on a social level. The very same people, the Christian Knights of the Ku Klux Klan, could kill arguably the premier Christian in this country in the 60s, and that was Dr. King. So both of them profess to follow the same religion, but racism affected them to the degree where they thought it was necessary to murder this brother. And it's the same thing in Islam. People talk about the global unity of Muslims and all that other stuff. Hogwash. Travel to the Middle East. Travel to Spanish Sahara. Travel even to the city of Mecca, and you will not miss the fact that it is still an environment where racism and racist ideology still is practiced. And people get mad when we say this because people want to believe that religion is pure. But all instruments of control when it comes down to controlling people have been infected with the white supremacist message. So when it comes down to my religion, what I say is that my religion is the liberation of my people, and we should take religious zeal in that effort. And this is why it's important to study history. When you study stuff like the Garvey movement, you find that part of that was religious revival and black nationalism combined. They talked about one God, one aim, one destiny. We have to get to that. We have to come up with religious ideology that makes us confront our number one problems. And if your church is not doing it, and you're not strong enough to divorce yourself from a lot of these religious paths that we were given, fine. Take a day other than a Sunday and go to a supplemental church that talks primarily about doing what is in the interest of African people.
What was your purpose of starting? What was your purpose of starting Nubian Directions?
Well, Nubian Directions is just a term that I use to remind us of the fact that we were the people that really established what they call the premier civilization that gave birth to Western civilization. Any real anthropologist, any real scientist who studies history knows that all of these so-called Western civilizations all evolved from ancient Egyptian civilization, which was given birth by the Nubian people, by African people. So we need to remember that at the beginning it was us. You know what I mean? And at the beginning, if we look back to the same spirit and attitude that we had that built the so-called Western civilization, we would be able to rediscover that we still have the capacity to build a new civilization with a new sense of humanity that is much better than the current systems that we live under. So I think it's important to remind us that that's the direction that we're looking at. We're looking in Nubian directions because we're looking to the ancient inspiration, the ancient ancestors who basically brought civilization to the world. You have to always remember that African people are the foundational people on this planet. This is not black supremacy. This is a historical fact. This is a scientific and biological fact. We are the oldest manifestation of human beings on this planet. We are the prototypical human beings, and everybody else has evolved from moving throughout the earth and experiencing various traumatic changes or whatever the case may be. But we are basically the archetypal people on the planet.
Why do you hope that the Nubian Directions will become the premier black social education company in the world?
Well, essentially, that's all we do. We don't write books about novels. We concentrate on social education. We concentrate on trying to make our people aware that we need to have our own understanding on what it's going to take for us to be successful as a people. So whereas people might put out information on how to become successful in life generally, we focus on what African people need to understand to navigate the treacherous waters that they live in all over this planet. Because most of those waters are infested with, white supremacy, and with an understanding that the African people are the world's doormats who you can steal anything you want from. You can relegate them, you can rape them, you can rob them, you can cheat them, you can distort their image, you can destroy their families, you can steal their countries, you can steal their resources. And this is a general perception of people around the world because white folks have done such a good job over the last 500 years of doing these kinds of things to us. So in order for us to create a new understanding, we need to be able to understand how we are viewed, and we need to know that the best allies that we have in solving our problems as a people are, in fact, each other. So we encourage black people to look away, not to get involved in, what the world is trying to tell us. In terms of who we are, we need to be looking to each other. We need to be treating each other better. We need to be loving each other more, and we need to be building institutions that will sustain our people amongst ourselves.
How are you going to construct your own church?
Well, my church, I'm going to start my church basically as a cyber church. Until I found a location, I'm going to have a weekly, me and my wife were just discussing how we're going to have a weekly presentation where we basically come out with a message, because our church seeks to really spread the religion in a way that anybody anywhere who understands the basic premises and principles and who are not trying to usher people back into the conventional religions, but understands the need for what we're doing, can establish a chapter of what we're doing anywhere. We're not interested in control. We're interested in our people coming to a church that talks about the liberation of our people, where the deity of the church is simply called the Creator, and we tell people to go to God as you see fit. But really, when we come together, we're trying to talk about the resolution of African people's problems, and we're trying to bring some of the religious fervor and the religious dedication, the same level of dedication that we bring to these religions that do nothing for us. For the most part, we're trying to get our people to come and bring that religious fervor to resolving the problems that are contemporary, that are real, that are mundane. We're not interested in talking about pie in the sky after we die. We're talking about solving problems right here on Earth.
What is the Garvey Center?
Well, the Garvey Center is the Marcus Garvey Holistic Center. It's located at 5105 Church Avenue. And that's a place that I've utilized many times, along with Brother Polite, as he mentioned, and some other brothers who come over there. And occasionally we have community speak-outs, and we have lectures and different things like that. So that's a location that we try to support, because we're losing these kinds of venues, and we really need them. We need places where our people can come, and they're not restricted to any kind of religious catechism, or they're not restricted by because the place is supported by some government funds. We need independent places where we can have real, honest discussion about our problems that are uncensored and uncontrolled by our enemies.
How did you come up with the title of your book, Towards a Destruction of a Nigger Mentality?
Well, it's important that we understand that the book is talking about a mentality that has been imposed on us as a result of our experience. We have never really examined a lot of the origins of our attitudes, and I think it's very important that we understand that the book describes a nigger as a hater of self and kind, and it's not really about, being born black, because we make a big distinction in the book between black people and their mindset and the mindset of niggers, because haters of self and kind are the residue of brainwashing and the residue of the bombardment of influences that come from us, from a culture that has sought to dominate us, destroy us, and subjugate us. So when you start talking about a nigger, we're talking about people who are engaged in black-on-black crime, black-on-black disrespect, who are undermining black institutions, who are disrespecting their people in mass. So we're trying to make people understand that this is the mentality that must be destroyed so that we can move, and it must be recognized so that we don't fall into the trap of believing that all black people have the same mindset and the same level of concerns and the same ideology. We're saying that we have to draw a line in the sand and say that black people who want to do right and be progressive need to be on one side, and those who are about this hateful mentality need to be identified, not so that they can be murdered or killed, but so that they can be convinced to try to come out of that.
For the NM test, how did you come up with those questions?
Well, those questions are basically designed to try to give a person insight into their own psychology. For example, if you read a few of the questions, they talk about, they ask you in a way to make you understand that, for example, if you're black, you may have a European aesthetic instead of an African aesthetic, and this may be causing you complications as far as how you relate to your people. It may cause you complications in how you build relationships, because you don't realize that your mind has been infected by the bombardment over the years of television and other propaganda sources that make you find your own African appearance less attractive as opposed to the image of Europeans. And this is a problem for us. And a lot of times, a lot of these things are so insidious that we don't really even realize that they're going on in our own minds. For example, how black people boycott each other, you know what I mean, and support all kinds of foreigners, but never really make a special commitment or even make the connection of how important it is to have our people collecting our wealth. So when it's time to do philanthropy, or when it's time to support causes that are essential to the maintenance of our communities, we can go to our own people who we support, and they can lend those funds to the establishment of these kinds of endeavors. That can't happen when you give all your money to Europeans and Jews and Chinese and Arabs and all kinds of people. This is not about racism. This is about survival. When we can't employ our own children, yet we support families of people from around the world, something is wrong.
Thank you very much. I do not have any more questions at this time. Gus, you can go ahead.
Context of white supremacy. Again, our guest, Mr. C.C. Blackman. I'll give out the number and actually see we do have some hands. I'll get them before I ask some more questions. The number, if you would like to dial in, 760-569-7676, and the code is 564-943#. If you dial that line and you have a question, just press *6. For the folks on the talk shoe line, it's *8 if you have a question. The person who dialed in, last 4 digits, 5407. Do you have a question for Mr. Blackman?
Yes, I do. Peace, Gus, Justice, and Mr. Blackman. I do have a question for you. You said when people approach you about knowing where your soul is going, you tell them that they're going to hell for not countering or fighting racism. Are these people white or non-white? And if the latter, do you believe they're going to hell for being confused and victimized?
No, I don't believe that. I'm not really sure where their soul is going. Nobody really knows. But if you're a believer, but the point is, I'm trying to show people that if you are not doing anything to deal with our real problems, then you are not only living in hell and accepting hell on this level, you may very well wind up in hell in the afterlife. The fact of the matter is the human being is supposed to interact with his environment to make it better. And if you sit and you find yourself sitting in congregations safely hiding away from the real problems, because I've argued for years that if we come out of these churches and mosques and roll up our sleeves and get into the real business of solving real problems for black people, we have a different type of community. Most of us say that unless you believe the way I believe, I'm not going to help you. And this is where the hypocrisy begins and ends. Because when white people came to convince, for example, if you go to Africa and you watch how white people missionaries convert Muslims to Christianity, or people who practice their tribal religions or their historical religions, what happens is you will find that typically Europeans come in and they might give out food or set up a hospital or set up a place where you can receive medical treatment. And the people say to themselves, these must be good people. These must be God-fearing people. Look at the way they are servicing these critical needs in our life. And that's what I'm talking about. Religious people in the black community do not spend enough time doing the real charity work that's necessary. You know, not just giving out food and clothing, but doing some real things in terms of socially educating our people without the natural tendency that they have to say that, listen, you know, you're suffering because you're not a Christian, or you're suffering because you're not a Muslim. A lot of that is hogwash. A lot of that suffering is coming from the fact that we cannot understand the society that we're living in, and that society is based on principles that come to us from global white supremacy.
Okay. I guess I didn't ask my other question. My other question is, how do you define African liberation? Is knowing or being aware the solution?
Well, African liberation, it's a good question. African liberation begins with understanding who you really are. You see, you cannot be free when you have historical amnesia. See, getting out of the physical shackles of slavery was the beginning of a journey towards freedom. But the real freedom is never really achieved until you become aware of what you once was. So for an African person, a person of African descent who's walking around in the 21st century that knows nothing about Africa, knows nothing about African culture, knows nothing about his history, he is still enslaved, because you can only be what white folks taught you to be. A lot of the characteristics and behaviors that we are practicing today are not even African. They're coming to us from a culture, and those activities are actually destroying us because they don't really reflect the true yearnings of the African soul. It's necessary to know who you once was. If a child was adopted and never knew he was adopted, but learned later on that he was adopted, he might want to try to find out who his birth parents were, what his real history was. That's a normal thing. We instead are grafted onto this so-called European tree, and we never really want to investigate who we really were, because the people who enslaved us and treated us so cruelly made sure that you had no allegiance, no recognition of your African languages, no recognition of your African cultures, no recognition of the way you went to God as an African. You have none of this knowledge. All you have is what white folks have told you that you are. So in that sense, African liberation begins with a reclamation of African culture. Okay? You have to reclaim your culture, find out who you are, and understand that you are the descendants of a people who were conquered in a war. Okay? And we're still at war because there are still people who are utilizing us in ways that benefit them and destroy us. So we need to know who we are, and that's the first part of African liberation, because liberation implies that the people are free to move towards self-determination. And I argue you cannot be free to move towards self-determination if you don't even know who the hell you are.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any further questions.
Thank you.
Person who called in on the Talk Shoe line from Michigan, hand up from Michigan. Did you have a question or comment for Did you have a question for Mr. Blackman?
Brother Blackman, Calvin Man of Good Fathers Only. I had twofold. Some things I agree with, some things I don't. My question is, considering that we did create this civilization, what is the biggest thing that we can correct? I've been laying shirts with kids been getting killed all the city of Detroit since 2004. At no point in time in my culture has anyone ever stepped up to the self-murder rate. Congo, Africa, all these other countries where we are fluent in different languages and black. What do you think that we could do as a culture worldwide, not just the United States, because I find that as a people in the United States, we give too much power to, we speak a lot of power into a lot of things that we, like you said, we had control of, but we just lost it in giving and doing and how to survive and our ways of survival and things like that, just like drugs and music and things like that. What do you think we could do as a culture worldwide? One of the things I speak to will be about fatherhood, but what do you think we can do as a culture worldwide to correct that? Hello?
Mr. Blackman, Mr. Blackman, are you with us?
I think we might have lost it. You there, brother?
I am, yes. I'm still seeing Mr. Blackman on the line. That is interesting. I will... Okay, I will dial him right back. There we go. Dialing him back. Please excuse the ring for a second, folks.
Okay.
We'll be back tomorrow. We'll be back tomorrow evening, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Mr. Tony Riddick, black male, discussing eugenics in North Carolina, 8th area, people activity, population tailoring. Tony Riddick will be with us tomorrow.
Oh, that's going to be nice.
Line is still ringing. Could be racist interference. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, so you say tomorrow it'll be some more discussion in that regard. You say Tony Riddick and who else?
He'll be by himself. I was just saying he's a black male, and he'll be discussing eugenics in North Carolina. They did a lot of forced sterilizations of black people and some white people as well, but they did a lot of forced sterilizations in that state, and he's doing a lot of research on that, the reparations effort to get compensation for the female victims in those cases. Some of them very young teenagers that they were destroying their ability to procreate and have children down in North Carolina. But he'll be on the program tomorrow. That will be Monday, January 2nd.
Wow. Well, I tell you.
The line is still ringing. I will try to ring Mr. Blackman again. Give me 1 second. Thank you all for you. And again, this is suspect white people at all times for the disruptions, phone line not working correctly. I have his cell line as well, so if we don't catch him on the landline, we'll redirect to his cell line.
That's amazing. Eugenics. You know, and that's all the more reason why. You know, it's just terrible, man.
Should be serious.
I fight right now. What you say, bro?
Oh, I just said we should be serious. All of us, black people.
I'm very serious. Yeah, I'm very serious. I'm mentoring over 250 boys by myself. I got a way to mentor in the mass. And if we don't shape these boys and these fathers up, ain't nothing going to come correct. All these dudes want to be swerving down, they want to be leaders and all that just for the limelight. That ain't getting it. Most people, I don't know half the stuff I'm doing, you know, but I just go at it. I got my own clothes and everything, so I ain't.
Your call has been forwarded to an automatic voice message system.
Very interesting. Very interesting. I'll give him a moment and dial him again. Suspect.
Yeah, I mean, the point of making a difference in our culture, man, it's not racism to do so. And a lot of us fear our own children. It's amazing. You know. And most of the parts that, bothers me is when it comes to that is
hang on a second, sir. Mr. Blackman, are you there?
Yeah.
Mr. Blackman, are you there? Sure, I thought his line picked up, but I'm not hearing anything. Mr. Blackman, can you hear us? Oh, okay, he's not on. Man, that is so strange. Thank you all for being patient. I'm trying to dial him again now.
Hello?
All righty. Good to hear from you.
Gotta call my cell phone. I'm trying to reach you by my cell phone. You got the number?
Yes, sir. I will dial your cell phone right now.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir. All righty. We'll call the cell phone. All right, dialing the cell phone. Thank you all for your patience. Appreciate it.
Your call has been forwarded to an automatic message.
That's strange. Give a second. That is strange. Okay, I'm dialing cell again. I'll take this moment to make sure that I get my salute in to black females again. The female who counter violence, racist white mob that jumped Blackman yesterday. Definitely want to salute her efforts again.
Your call has been forwarded to an automatic voice message system. 4.
That is crazy.
It is real windy, though, bro.
Real windy? In your area of the world?
Real windy. Yeah. I mean, and, you know, I don't know where you guys are located. Where are you guys located?
I couldn't find my other handset because the other one went dead for my house phone. So, okay, let me know when we're back on the air.
We are on live. Thank you all for being patient. Got it corrected. The caller in Michigan, he's still with us. If you want to...
Okay, I want to answer his question. Before we got cut off, he was making mention of the fact that even in cultures, African cultures that are intact, we still have the problem of black-on-black crime and some of these other issues. That's exactly correct, but what I want to make a mention of is the fact that we neglect to understand that the very thing that happened to us has happened in Africa. In other words, while they hit us in the head and murdered us and did what they did during the African Holocaust here in the diaspora, they colonialized Africa and did basically the same thing. So it's possible to go into a country like Nigeria, which is predominantly Muslim, and you find a bleeding European Jesus Christ on the top of the churches as you go into the hospitals. So it just shows you how this is a global problem. And part of the problem is that globally, we as African people are the only people who were historically conquered with the justification being racism, and we accepted almost hook, line, and sinker the religious beliefs of the people that conquered us. This is unheard of in history. If you look at the Japanese, it's interesting how there's very, very few Japanese who practice the religion of Christianity, for example. In the 80s, I remember reading an article saying that one of the reasons why they were able to even compete economically with Europeans is that they don't have the handicap of a lot of people who have been conquered historically by Europeans. They don't even follow the religious system that was put in place by the enemy. So the bottom line is that, yes, what is the message? The message is very simple. Globally, we need to have the perspective of Pan-Africanism. We need to understand that we are in a unique situation that will not be resolved necessarily by religion. Our situation globally is that African people have a common history, whether they're on the continent or whether they're in the diaspora. And that history is domination and oppression, exploitation, and enslavement by Europeans. So what we have to understand is that we have nothing has really changed. We made the calendar may say 2012, but the reality is that our minds, our behavior, our functionality still operates in accord with white supremacy. In fact, some of the biggest white supremacists you can find happen to be African people. So what we need to do is realize that we need to take on the philosophy of Pan-Africanism, where we say that regardless of our tribal or national affiliations, our dominant concern should be the restoration of human dignity for African people on the planet. You know, it's interesting to me how in this country, for example, many of us wrap ourselves in the flag and profess to be part of America, American citizens, and all this other stuff. But if you look at just the history of this country, who historically has existed for some 200 odd years, it's a joke to consider the fact that African people have been on the planet for millions of years, and have had societies for hundreds of thousands of years. So it's important to realize that our greater concern should be what's going on with African people and not who's running a system, a society that is essentially unfair and has been corrupt to us. If you look at the fact that, if you look at the incarceration numbers, if you look at the unemployment numbers, if you look at who is the victim of racial attack in this country, look at the FBI statistics. We're at the top of the list when it comes to hate crimes, being the victims of hate crimes. So what we have to realize is that it's a bigger concern beyond the political. There's a bigger concern beyond national identity based on I'm an American, I'm a Caribbean person, I'm from Trinidad, I'm from Jamaica, I'm from Angola. There's a bigger identity than I'm a Hausa, a Yoruba, or Fulani, I'm from this particular tribe. And that tribe, that identity is that of an African person who has commonality with every other African person on this planet, in that all of us have experienced the oppression of global white supremacy. So that's the unifying idea. And then once you understand that, you understand that we should not be the instruments of our own destruction. And in fact, the reason why we are in most cases destroying ourselves is because we have not made the decision to stand up to our historical oppressors. If we all just said, we shouldn't be fighting amongst ourselves, which is a very big characteristic among all oppressed people, which is rather than turn on the enemy who they have been overwhelmed by, who have put them in a position of indignity, they turn on each other. Instead of saying, why are we killing each other when there's a group of people that place us in a situation where we are frustrated with each other? So this is a very, very important thing. So he makes a great point. It's not just the understanding of culture, but your true culture. And this is the ironic part about it. If you knew your true culture, you wouldn't be attacking yourself. You would find something wonderful to love about who you are as an African person. I'm very pleased to be who I am because I understand the beauty and I see the beauty in my people. African people are the most loving people on the planet. If we can start to turn that love toward each other and stop hosting other people around the world and trying to make them comfortable with us and treating them like they're conquering heroes when they come and set up a business in our community and start to shed some of that love on each other, we'll be just fine. They know we're very loving because if we weren't, we'd have murdered everybody that was associated with the slave trade. When we got free, we wasn't looking for revenge. We was looking to try to heal our families and find displaced members of our families. It's not even in African. You think about what the horrors that were inflicted on us. We would never do that to anybody. That's not even in African psychology. We're not a people that go around the world and invade nobody. We're not a people that's trying to impose nothing on nobody. African people are the most gregarious people on the planet. You walk into Africa, African people are friendly. We're loving. That's who we are. We're the most humanistic people on the planet. But what we need to do is practice that amongst ourselves.
Well,
caller in Michigan, did he answer your question, sir? Okay.
Is brother still here?
I'm not hearing him. It looks like he's still on the switchboard, but I'm not hearing him. I'm not sure if he got disconnected. He said it was apparently windy, or maybe they're having a storm.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, sir.
I can hear you now.
Yeah, he answered some of them. My second question would be, from where I'm at, I'm like you. I want to do something. I'm involved in leading. I've even got the Hidden Colors video, and it's been displayed in some charter schools and helping some kids. My thing is, do you think it's at all possible that just based on ourselves, this is an idea, it's something that I'm going to introduce to my culture because I think it's okay that we do unite and we do support one another, and we do, because we're already moving in that regard anyway. We're strategically, a lot of the men that I deal with, we're, ideally selecting different businesses because of fatherhood being what it is, where so many black businesses are headed up by so many black men. We are not keeping them in business. And by, strategically selecting those businesses, I think that we can help. So my question is, do you think it is at all possible or ever that we would have our own history book that would be placed on every black dining table? Because that's one of the goals one of the things I want.
All of these things are possible, but the first thing that must happen is that we must change the appetite of our people. We have to teach our people to stop being engaged in escapism and start to try to deal with the real problems that we have as a people. Our problem is that we're running from the problem. The truth is we are overwhelmingly united. Most of us are completely dissatisfied with the black experience as experienced by a black person interacting with other black people. We simply do not get enough from each other or give enough to each other to make being black something to be proud of or feel good about. You cannot have pride walking through your neighborhood that's owned by everybody else. You cannot have pride when the messages given to you about the place where the part of the world that you come from are always about poverty, exploitation, war, and disease and all that kind of stuff. All right, these are sources that are given to you because they don't really want you to know that you are, in fact, a powerhouse on the planet. But you have to grow up and mature to the point where you say, we have to be a people that are productive. In other words, anything that we're using and consuming as a people should be produced by us. We shouldn't have no unemployment, not with the problems that we have. So once we reject the European paradigm that, the great white father, the president, all these kind of people are going to take care of African people or have some kind of concern for us and get in the real world where we realize that if we don't care about each other, nobody will, then we'll start to see a change in these problems. You have people writing history books. You have people writing books that could elevate the consciousness of the people, but it's not happening simply because we don't have an appetite for that. So in order to create that appetite, you have to remember that our people are dominated. See, one of the greatest things they ever invented, and we've been retarded ever since that, was television. If you look at the height of the civil rights movement, part of the reason why it had any chance of succeeding was the fact that most people were not locked into television. Okay, those people that marched with Dr. King and all these people were not. In fact, television really became popular in American households around 1955. By the middle of the 1960s, you had quite a few middle-class blacks who might have had a black or white television, but television was not the rage that it is right now. The idea of programming society through television is something that they've been utilizing with great effect, and I say television, but it's also in the movies, it's also in all the things that allow us to interface with the so-called larger culture or the dominant culture in this society. All those things have been cleverly utilized to perpetuate an image of ourselves, and this is the sad part about it. Their art now reflects the reality. So if they want to move us in the direction, they put it in the movies. So when they wanted black men who were coming back from Vietnam, who were unemployed, black men who in the 60s had Malcolm and Dr. King as heroes to move in the direction of dope, they simply create a Hollywood movie called Superfly. And millions of us now accept this as the reality because we saw it on the screen. It must be real. They come with these messages on a regular basis. When they want to convince black women that black men are their historical oppressors, they come up with a fictional account of the color purple, and that's what they put in the movies. Silly, you're black, you're ugly, and a woman. So now the mouth and the mind of your real oppression is not the white man, but it's coming from black people. So they know how to keep us constantly confused. And if you study Neely Fuller, he explains excellently that it's the goal of the white supremacists to keep the other people on the planet confused. And as long as your informational base is coming from your historical enemy, you're not going to find any relevant truth in that that's going to help you solve your problem as a people. So our problem is that we have a conundrum because black people are extremely visual and are extremely hooked into the escapist entertainment that they give us. But the entertainment is not just entertainment with a benign slant. It's entertainment designed to achieve certain social objectives. So they show you what position you should be playing when they put you on TV. That's why you might see a black person on the show who gets 1 minute of commentary on a show about commentary, and there's 5 other white folks who talk for 10 to 15 minutes, and the camera just glosses over the token black person because this is the game that they play. You are a subordinate person in this society. You are simply the support staff for white supremacy, So you have to know what your role is. So these are the kinds of things that we have to be aware of. So our liberation starts to begin when we understand that we have to have a critical mind at all times if we're going to view entertainment as it's presented to us. And then we also have to recognize that we need to turn that crap off, open up some books, and start to find out who we really are as a people and start to speak honestly about our problems. Honesty is the unfailing bullet to start solving problems. We need to talk about how they're homosexualizing our youth. We have to start talking about the collapse of the black family. We have to talk about the fact that we don't have a definition of black manhood that allows our men to take charge of the community and take charge of business and direct our families in a positive direction. We have to talk about these things instead of trying to escape from them all the time or relegating them to something that is, oh, that's, you know, how we are as a people. That's not us. That's not how we are. We can define ourselves or change the direction that we want to go in anytime we get ready. So if we want to see black history books, black people have to vote with their dollars. And when brothers come out with books like the book that came out, they have to support that. This is not about capitalism. This is about the reality that you have to support the honest efforts of our people to liberate themselves. Look at what we do to our leaders. What has happened to Dr. King's children? What has happened to Malcolm's children? Did we take care of these people who were who were on the front line, who lost their lives in the struggle for African people? Did we revere them? No, we don't. We forget about them. Why? Because we don't understand that you are not going to keep producing outstanding leadership if you're not going to support it. And what a lot of our people who could be out there on the forefront doing great things for our people know is that if our people are not able to support a 20,000 pound, if you put a 20,000 pound barbell on a table that can only hold 2,000 pounds, that table is going to collapse. We can't even support the kind of dynamic leadership that's right at the grassroots level because our people are not even socially conditioned to even want to solve their problems. Their minds are not being used to solve their problems. Their minds are being used to try to cope with, get along with, make excuses for, make agreements with their own oppression. So these are the kind of, so we have to change our mindset, in other words, in order for us to try to get to that revolutionary level. How can you have revolutionary consciousness when you don't interface with anything that will give you revolutionary consciousness? So you don't really want change. You want somebody else to do the change, but you as an individual must be committed on a daily basis to changing your psychology so that you can find the freedom that you're looking for and free some people that surround you.
Context of white supremacy. Caller in Michigan, hang tight. I want to get in a few more questions on the religion piece, and then if other folks, if you all have other questions, just *8 if you're on the talk shoe line. We can get some more questions in. If you're on the free HD line, *6. One of the points that you just raised, Mr. Blackman, about that change in focus, just to kind of revisit religion, when I've heard black people, non-white people saying that, you know, they are completely separated from religion, they'll never attend church again or pray again and things of that nature. I've made more of an effort to remind black people not that long ago, just 40, 50 years ago, the black church was the hub of counter-racist activity. Like, I don't think if all of us were doing the same work now, working against racism, I think it would have been nearly impossible to avoid being in a black church, and I would even say being in a black church on a regular basis, just because of the people, as you mentioned, with Marcus Garvey's efforts, Dr. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, so many people who were working against Fannie Lou Hamer, tons of them who were working against racism, white supremacy. They were doing so from the church. Even Nat Turner, preacher, using religion to motivate black people towards black liberation, ending white supremacy. And I'd highlight the reason racists were burning down so many churches and continue to do so because it was the hub of counter-racist activity. Can you just kind of touch on that for a minute?
Well, the church is where we historically organized ourselves, okay? We have to remember that the church was given certain directives when it was founded. Our people were not Christians for a long portion of their enslavement in this country. In fact, it was during the 1800s when there was a strong evangelical movement in this country that was led by many people who did not believe in the equality of African people, but they felt that slavery was wrong. So we should never forget that part of the reason why we became very much involved with the church was that we recognized that there were some people talking about abolition in the church. Now, the interesting part about that is that when you get to the Richard Allens and the Absalom Jones, these people, when they got involved with white churches, they realized that these white churches, you know, while they were against slavery, they were every bit as racist as the regular population. Blacks used to have to sit in the balcony or have to have separate seating arrangements, and they believed that while slavery was wrong, once again, we were still a subhuman or an inferior group of people. So they did not believe in the equality of race of the races, even though many of them were abolitionists. Now, I say that to say this. Because we wanted to get an escape from slavery, a lot of us converted to Christianity. We were not Christians on that slave ship coming over here. Okay, we was not coming on the good ship Jesus talking about we are Christians. That didn't happen till we, saw that as a way to advance ourselves out of slavery. But if you stop and think about it, our preacher class has basically sold us out. Okay, you might have grassroots preachers who try to really address the real natural problems of our people, but most of our church leaders are no longer activists. Most of our church leaders, their dream is to build a mega church and make a whole lot of money. So a lot of them have sold out to capitalism. They're not the people who are, we talk about Dr. King's holiday, but Dr. King is not the role model for black preachers. Dr. King is somebody that's a problem for black preachers, because Dr. King is the guy who took the money that he got from the Nobel Peace Prize and donated it to charity. These guys today, they're prosperity preacher. They want to sell you holy water and cloths and all that other stuff so you can make a lot of money. The truth is that if you open up any scripture and read it with the mind and soul of a free black person, you can be empowered to deal with your problem. You don't need a whole lot of scripture to find what Nat Turner found. Nat Turner found a scripture that says, "Seek ye the kingdom of God, and all things shall be added unto you." Seeking the kingdom of God for him was to seek death. Because where you want to really have this communion and this real meeting with God, that's in the grave. That's why they always say everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die. Well, Nat Turner was saying, I'm ready to die. I'm ready to die, but before I die, I'm going to give justice. And the justice was, I'm going to do to your people what y'all have been doing to me. Okay? And some scared Negroes sold him out. So the bottom line is that we have to remember religion can be extremely motivational. I don't care what religion it is. But the problem is, the disconnect is that our people are no longer utilizing religion to achieve a liberation or to achieve an end that is that's going to bring about liberation. I've argued with people who are communists, who are atheists, who are espousing socialism, that our people are never going to be the type of people that's going to reject this idea of God. You can forget about that. You might take that to somebody else, but that's not the African way. The African way is that spirituality goes hand in hand with African existence. So you're not going to convince us to give up on God entirely. When you come with that message to black people, you really basically get nowhere. So the bottom line, we have to convince our people to marry their spirituality to their liberation. Because a lot of times their religion is not going to do it. It goes back to what we said earlier. Religion is just a path to spirituality, but the real achievement is that connection between you and the divine, where you feel that you are living your life in step with divine approval, and that's what's important. And I don't see how anybody can say that they have a plethora of problems, and God gave them a mind, a soul, and a spirit to solve those problems, and yet and still they're not doing everything they can to fight against their oppression. I don't understand how you can justify that and say that you're a spiritual person. You can say you're a religious person and not do anything about it, but you can't say that you're a truly spiritual person and not do anything about it. We will stand in subways, at subways in New York, you'll see black people, Jehovah's Witnesses, and these organizations make me really laugh. If you look at it as a pyramid, Jehovah's Witnesses, 90% black, the people that run the whole organization are white. You take a look at the Church of God in Christ, very similar. You take a look at the Seventh-day Adventists, very similar. 80-90% of the congregation or the people that's following it are black, and the people at the top running it are white. And the interesting part about that is that they're making money and they're still promoting the messages of white supremacy. I can't tell you how many Jehovah's Witnesses have knocked on my doors with their pamphlets depicting everybody in all these divine personalities as Europeans. So you're knocking on my door, you as a black person, claiming to be a Jehovah's Witness with a picture of your white Jesus, which is nothing more than white supremacy, you know what I mean? And because it's given to me on a religious basis, it goes below, I can't, these people must be nice people, they're religious people, but they're carrying the message of white supremacy. So these are the things that we have to keep in mind. Yes, religion can be very, very powerful. Yes, spirituality can be very, very powerful in giving the person the kind of spunk that they need to fight on a daily basis. And I don't see how you really can do it. In fact, I don't think we've ever had a great leader that wasn't spiritually inspired. But we got to stop kidding around and stop thinking that religion and spirituality are one, and we got to stop using religion as a place where cowards hide.
I will say again, self-respect is the highest form of spirituality.
And I want to comment on that. What she said about self-respect is so true. Consider the fact that if the temple is within and the Spirit of God lives within you, the Quran says into every human being, God has breathed something of his own spirit. Okay? If man in the Bible is said that God breathed into the nostrils of Adam and he became a living being. If that infinitesimal spark of divinity exists in every human being, then the power of God is within you. And if you really respect that, God cannot be oppressed and do nothing about it, especially when you know that God is not just a God of love and mercy, God is a God of justice. And justice is you having the same dignity as anybody else on this planet. So there's nothing wrong with you running your own community or charting your own destiny or seeking justice. We have become a people that always apologize for our oppression. And we always apologize. We also always try to overlook what the oppressor is doing. We always make excuses as if it's something wrong with us. But the only thing that's wrong with us is that we refuse to claim our natural dignity. And we've made too many agreements with the indignities that have been imposed on us by white supremacy.
I wanted you to comment on, I thought it was an important point you raised about the success that racist missionaries have had going to various parts of the world and converting, oppressing non-white people and paying attention to some of the tactics that they've used to be so successful. What do you think specifically white people did to be so effective in steering black churches away from being focused on black liberation, replacing white supremacy with justice, as opposed to...
Well, they make the classic argument that when you raise issues of social justice, you destabilize the society. You make people uncomfortable. It's unchristian-like for you to make people uncomfortable because you're speaking honestly about a condition we all know exists. But if we talk about that, it might lead to some white people blowing up 4 little girls in the church, or it might lead to some people getting upset. You know what I mean? If you read the books or the accounts of what happened with Dr. King, he had some real reservations about some of the things he was saying after they killed those 4 little girls. It's horrible to think that you could be responsible for the death of little children because you incited the fury of racists by just simply telling the truth and demanding dignity for your people. So this is why the message is always, pie in the sky, let's wait till another time, let's pray this kind of oppression away. You can't pray this oppression away. In fact, we are a dying group of people in this country, truth be told, because we are too eager to put dealing with the problem we put dealing with the problem on the back burner too much. We always find a way not to really deal with the problem. And what's happening is our children now are assaulting us. They're killing us. They're homosexualizing themselves. We're aborting our children at an alarming rate. We are killing ourselves. Genocide is in full effect, and the black community is headed toward destruction. It's on cruise control. And the fact of the matter is, part of it is because we have been anesthetized and we have been opium we have been inundated with not only just the physical dope, but the mental dope that's coming to us from religion. We cannot get off our asses and do something about our problem, because somebody is always telling us that somebody paid the supreme price. Jesus already died. The blood already took care of it. We got all kinds of crazy messages. You know what I mean? And the utopian ideas of racial unity around the world. We have played our part. Black people are not racist. We react to racism, but we don't have no agenda in terms of discriminating against nobody like that. When you see a black person acting in that way, that's not even real racism, because most of us don't have the power of real life and death decisions like the racist enemies we confront do. When white people have a racist grudge, they can institutionalize a whole generation of African people and put them in the jails. Believe me, the drug laws would change if it was a whole bunch of young white men filling up the prisons. Believe me, it wouldn't even be a crime. So the point is, we got to wake up and realize that we were brought over here for a purpose. That purpose has been fulfilled. Okay, we were brought over here to be slaves and to be exploited. All the cotton has been picked. And now we're in a situation where the only thing they can do to us is to benignly as possible get us to murder ourselves. This is what's going on with African people. So they have really fattened us up for the kill, and they have allowed us to destroy ourselves because we are trying to really please white folks. Our behavior has totally been consistent. We are consistently trying to get along with white folks, and we forget that when they talk about global terrorism, nobody has been the victim of more global terrorism than African people for centuries. When you shoot a man on the eve of his wedding 50 times in New York City and shoot another black man 42 times, I mean, if you look at what's really happening, you will understand that historically we are the most terrorized race on the planet. So I can understand why it's difficult for us to get out of our cowardness. And how can you get out of cowardness when you don't even know that you don't know your history, so you don't even know that you're behaving like a coward? But what we really need is the men and women, like Garvey used to say, who are committed, man, who are committed to justice for the race. And when we get those kind of people, they'll start to see the hypocrisy in their own religious views. And if they're smart, they'll embrace spirituality and use that to give them the kind of courage and strength that is necessary to wake up the rest of our people.
Context of white supremacy, I believe Justice, she says she has a few more questions. If you're listening in and you have questions, 760-569-7676, and the code is 564-943#. Press *6 if you dial that line and you have a question, *8 if you're on the talk shoe line and you have questions. Justice, please proceed.
Excuse me. I am going to ask a question about the term race. But first I'm going to read what Mr. Fuller has to say about the term race in his word guide on page 309. It says, race, racism, racist. Use these terms during the existence of white supremacy racism. Use these terms only to apply to those white persons who practice white supremacy racism, either directly or indirectly in any area of activity. Do not use these terms to apply to any persons in the known universe who are non-white, black, brown, beige, yellow, red, tan, etc. Specifically, those persons who are classified as non-white and who function as non-white. Do not, as long as white supremacy exists, say that you are a member of a so-called race. As long as white supremacy racism exists, always say that non-white person is or can be a racist. As long as white supremacy racism exists, always think, speak, and act as if no non-white person is able to practice racism. It says on the website, Nubian-directions.com, let's see, where's that? Okay, Nubian Directions is a company and a movement that is dedicated to the social education of the African race. What do you mean when you say African race?
Well, first of all, you have to remember that race is an artificial concept. There's only human beings on the planet. We use race is more of a social dynamic than anything else. Okay, the reality is that race really does not exist. It's just a human race. But the problem is when you are communicating to people, okay, but the practice on the ground is not that. The practice on the ground is not that, there's just one race, the human race. The practice on the ground is that people are very, very divided by these artificial concepts of black, white, whatever the case may be. Our mistake, in my opinion, would be to ignore what the real reality is. So even though I understand, I'm educated to understand that there's really no such thing on the scientific level as race, we know that the minor differences that manifest them in the genetics and the appearance of variation among the human race creates serious problems. None have been more serious than the problems that have been created for African people or black people. So the bottom line is that we can get very scientific, but the reality is that racism is real if on a social level. That's just the reality. And until we evolve into a world where that's no longer the issue, for example, if you travel to Canada and they say the Canadian government keeps no racial statistics. In other words, you cannot find a Canadian governmental agency that will say, oh, we have so many blacks living in the city of Toronto and so many whites. They just say we have Canadians. That is a non-racial concept. That's a good thing. But that's not what's happening in the reality around the world in most places. Most places, they keep a very close idea on race because race is about power. I have power because I can use this distinction to control another group of people. Now, a thing called white privilege exists. And what happens with white privilege is that I might be white, and I might scientifically understand that all people basically evolved from the same genetic tree, but I realize I have a social and a financial and political advantage by identifying myself as different from somebody else. Now, the problem is that we cannot embrace that idea. You can be as non-racial as you want to be. That does not exclude you from being a victim of global white supremacy. So, with all due respect, I agree with Neely Fuller that we can say that non-white people can never really be the racist that racist white man and white woman may be, but I disagree that we should not talk in terms of race because the average person will not understand. In fact, black people have done a big job in trying to convince themselves that racism really doesn't exist. A lot of us, if we get the social mobility in our own lives, we will quickly convince ourselves that any kind of racial thinking is wrong, when in fact it's stupid not to think racially, especially when that's really actually what's going on. So it's very important that we understand, nobody can love and respect you till you love and respect yourself. And nobody can claim that they love you, especially say you're dating interracially. Nobody can respect you if they don't respect your people. It doesn't work like that. So the bottom line, we have to grow up and realize that the theory and the practice are two different things. In theory, there is no there's no other race but the human race. But in practice, that's not what's going on. And in order for me to have dignity on this planet, the segment or the group that I most identify with or the group that I have been born into, I have a mission to make sure that that group has dignity. And that's the way I combat racism. I'm not saying that we should replace white racism with black racism. All I'm simply saying is that Pan-Africanism is a philosophy of love that would have naturally come about had we not been interfered with by Europeans and outsiders. And I'm saying that because I love my people in the manifestation of what I am, what the Creator created in me that is unique from others, I love that, and I want to protect that. But that doesn't mean that I hate anybody else. So we have to be very, very careful not to get suckered into this utopian thinking that, race is some kind of artificial construct and we have no struggle. We have a huge struggle because our children that we should love and our people that are born who are similar to us are going to experience all kinds of oddities in their life just because of the uniqueness of the way the Creator chose to manifest them. So I think that we got to be very mature about that. Okay, you want to see racism disappear? All black people have to do is turn inward. Leave white folks alone. Love your own people, build amongst your own people, achieve dignity, organization, and structure, and do what you have to do to take care of your people. Make sure that your continent is controlled by your people, and watch how the world respects you. And watch how the world will get out of your way. We are mostly in our own way because, like I said, a lot of us like to be perpetual victims. I'm tired of victimization. I got 3 children. I'm not going to let them grow up in the world thinking that in any way they have to take a backseat to anybody, or in any way that they're inferior, or the world needs to be led by some other people based on a color distinction. That's not going to happen. I don't teach my children hatred. I teach my children to love who they are, and to be proud of who they are, and to know their history, and to know themselves.
What is your definition for the terms black or black person?
Well, a black person is a person that has gotten to the first step of liberation, which means I'm going to acknowledge the real, true reason why I'm being oppressed. See, a lot of people don't like the term black, but I always liked it because it makes you identify your difference. But then you have to graduate into becoming an African person. We are an African people. That is the reality. The root of our people is from Africa. And the bottom line is that if you hate the tree, you hate the fruit. So if you hate being African, you have to be involved in self-hatred. Now, the black person is in the middle zone. He is saying, I consciously recognize, I get the fact that my oppression is due, in fact, to the fact that my skin is dark. I am black. Okay? Or I come from a people who physically look different from white folks. Now, once I acknowledge that, I also have to grow to the understanding that I now must find out what that's about in terms of who I am beyond just skin color and pigmentation. I have to know what my history is, and I have to know what these people stole from me so that I can accept myself fully on a cultural level. So when you say that you're African, that means you're connecting to, and we still have to use a term that really is, it's not even a term that, black people, Africanus, the Roman conqueror. Anyway, but the point is this. We have to understand that being black means that you acknowledge the fact that you are a people essentially at war with other folks based on the fact that you came into this world wearing a different color than these people, or these people are using your color as an excuse to oppress you. So I think it's very, very important to understand that black is not the end. Black is part of the journey. First, you become black and conscious of what it means to be black in terms of how you are being oppressed and what's being done to you, and then you have to graduate into accepting your Africanness, and that's what it's about.
The people who have the most power right now are white people, so they do the classifying. They determine who has to function as a black person and who does not have to function as a black person. Also, in order to have a race, you have to practice racism. Race is racism. My next question is, it's on your website here. I'm trying to get to it. Okay. So on your website, it says that, let's see, where is that? CC is concerned about the future of the African race in general, and more specifically, the condition of Africans in America. He believes that self-destruction is on cruise control in the black community with no end in sight. Why are you concerned about the future of the black people in general, and more specifically, the condition of black people in this area of the world?
Well, I'm concerned because that's the area of the world where I'm from. And I'm concerned because I have to live with it and I have to see it every day. And I'm concerned with the fact that our awareness level does not match the level of danger that we really are in. We are very, very comfortable in this society, despite the fact that statistically, if you do an analysis of what's really going on with us, we are dying. If you look at who has AIDS, if you look at who's incarcerated, if you look at whose family is collapsing, if you look at who does not control the economic base of their own community, if you look at who's being miseducated in these schools, if you look at who is the victim, who's most likely to be the victim of crime, often perpetrated by people that look just like them, if you look at who is destroying some of the beautiful talents that they possess by corrupting their music, if you look at the way the sisterhood has been destroyed and the brotherhood has been destroyed, if you look at the way we're being depicted in contemporary culture, whether it's produced by blacks or whites, you would be very concerned yourself. Because what happens is that I'm not experiencing my life on this planet as a European. I'm not experiencing my life on this planet as a Chinese. I'm experiencing my life on this planet as an African or as a black man, and as a result of that, I'm very concerned about the quality of that experience, which is mostly going to be something that is something I experience with other black people. So I need to make sure that I do my part to ensure that there's a consciousness raising so that we can have much more of a beautiful experience with each other. You know what I mean? It's very important that we grow up so that we can serve each other instead of serving everybody else. Okay? Our people, especially our people who are able to make any progress in the society, especially financially or resource-wise, most of their resources go into the service of Europeans. And instead of us, validating what we are and learning to embrace and love who we are and serving that end.
Thank you, Mr. Blackman, for coming on the program and sharing your view. And thank you for sharing your views on the system of racism, white supremacy, and thank you for answering my questions. And I hope that you can come back on the program.
I'll be happy to do so.
Gus, go ahead.
Context of white supremacy. We have a little over 10 minutes left. If you have questions, people that are listening in, if you're on the TalkShoe line, *8, and if you're on the free HD line, it's 760-569-7676, and the code is 564-943#. I wanted to ask, keep my eye on the switchboard, see if folks have questions, if I see any hands. I did want to ask, though, you said, I think repeatedly, that black people, they're not going to completely break from spirituality, and that will have to be a component of combating white supremacy. Just looking at the history, as I said, I think many of our best efforts to oppose racist man and racist woman, they have been firmly rooted in the church, as I said, from Nat Turner all the way through the so-called civil rights movement. In my opinion, just looking at the state of the plantation, specifically looking at black churches in the Northwestern Hemisphere, the Eddie Long scandal, you talked about Creflo Dollar, and just it seems like a lot of younger people are divesting in the church. I think this is the optimal time to attempt black people who are concerned about black liberation and about the existence and quality of life of black people worldwide. I feel like this is the optimal time to attempt to redirect the focus of churches and to get them to focus on white supremacy as a major problem. Do you think that's something that we could be invested in right now? And if so, how?
Well, the reality is that you have more believers in the street than in these churches. And what happens is that those people need a place to say, I want to be spiritual, but I don't want to go down the path that I know is filled with corruption and has been a tool utilized by white supremacists. So there's an enormous opportunity for churches like mine, and because you got to understand something. I believe that all of us are responsible ultimately for the upliftment of our people. And the reality is that I'm not interested in setting up something that I only have control over. I think that people should set up institutions that are based in spirituality, that are talking about the liberation of our people. Okay? And if that happens, then you will see a change in our behavior, a dramatic change in our behavior. There's not no one way to go to God. There's all kinds of ways to go to God. And that should mostly be left up, in my opinion, to the individual. But what should be what unites us and what is a common problem that can be discussed is what we all go through trying to cope in a society that is filled with systemic white supremacy and oppression. So I think it's very, very important that we do take this opportunity to say, you know what, new times require new approaches to old problems. And one of the things we should do is we should definitely be trying to set up liberation churches everywhere we go. If you have to set them up in your living room, in your house, if you have to set them up, if you can get a local preacher, imam, or a rabbi to give you a few hours to talk about what you would call the liberation of our people, that's fine. Because a lot of people love the religious zeal. We have organizations like the Nation of Islam who try to marry a message of black power to or black empowerment to a religious message, but a lot of people say, hey, I like what they're talking about in terms of black power, but I don't necessarily want to be a black Muslim. I get that. I don't have a problem with that. You have people who say, I like the religious message over here, but I have a problem because they're not really fulfilling the need. You know, what people want to hear is how God is operating in their lives today to solve their real problems. And that's what you're not hearing. When I was a kid, I used to go to a particular religious institution, and I was very pleased because they married the message of the religious ideology with what's happening with black folks. But eventually, that started to die down, and as time went on, that message almost got completely sanitized, and what we was given is this message of this fake and phony global brotherhood where, you know, we shouldn't even be talking about racism because religion is going to solve the problems. And I'll argue that if religion was going to solve our problems, black people would have had their problem solved a long time because ain't nobody more invested in religion than we are. The most successful businesses in black America are churches. That's a fact. So our people are very, very invested in religion with very little returns from the religion because the religion is really just not addressing the real problems of the people. Church on every corner, mosque on every corner, synagogue on every corner, out of control drug problem, out of control collapse of family life, out of control, no control of the business space, out of control of being able to even employ each other, out of control in terms of what our health problems are. You know what I mean? Preventable diseases, AIDS, diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease. You know what I mean? High stress on the job. Most of us are rugged individualists trying to build with a world of white supremacy on our own when we should be uniting and aiding each other and talking about ways in which we... Because, see, the problem is not that the racists have all the power. The problem is we refuse to reclaim our power. We refuse to organize ourselves politically. And we cannot organize ourselves. Since we don't organize ourselves politically, for the end, white folks organize us. And they organize us toward our destruction. Because you got to remember, they're very clear as to why they brought us over here. They did not bring us over here to experience the blessings of liberty. They did not bring us over here to have parity with white folks. They did not bring us over here because they want to pay us money for our labor. They brought us over here to totally exploit us. And their attitudes haven't changed. And now that they have completely wiped their behinds with our people, they want to kill our people, but they want to set it up. And they're so clever that they have let... You know, Millie Fuller said they're the cleverest people on the planet. And I agree with him, because one of the things you have to be the biggest thief on the planet, you need to be the biggest liar on the planet. And you got to lie so well and keep the people who are the victims of true racism so confused that they think that they're at fault because they don't understand the system that they're living in. And very few of us are able to break away from this black matrix and figure out the fact that they have manipulated us to destroy ourselves. In fact, they have conned us so much, a lot of us don't even think we have a problem as a people. So this is what you're up against when you're trying to fight global white supremacy, and this is what you're up against when you're trying to wake our people up, and our people don't even recognize that if you look at what's happening on the macro level, you can see nothing but death and destruction. If you're an intelligent person, you know that something has to change that. You know, but like I said, they taught us how to think as individuals. So because your particular individual life may be going in a certain direction and has not come up into those obstacles, you know, it's just like a sister told me just the other day. She never really understood the political message and the discontent that she heard coming from a lot of black local leaders until she started trying to find a suitable mate and started to experience all the problems associated with that. And then it dawned on her that there's a reason why it's a problem that we got 2,000 guys in not far from me sleeping in the shelter, 2,000 black men. You know what I mean? Without food, not being involved with family life, not being mates to black women, not being functional. Then it became a problem that all these brothers don't have no education. You know what I mean? A lot of sisters don't have no education. All these things start to become a problem when you try to get your personal needs fulfilled in our experience, you know, and there never was a problem until you get out of that individual mindset. Because to be African is to have a collective mindset. You're concerned about the existence of us all, not just your individual self. And once you grow to understand that, you'll realize that we live in a social context, and we need to do something about the general condition, not just our own condition.
Context of white supremacy. See, 404 has a hand up. 404. Did you have a question for Mr. Blackman? Your line should be open.
Yes. Greetings to you, Gus, Justice, as well as to the other listeners on the line. And Mr. Blackman, if I may be heard, can I?
Certainly.
We hear you.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Blackman. I had a question for you here, and one of the things that kind of piqued my interest when you were speaking on the last part of your conversation that you just had, and you were speaking on theology and what it is that we perhaps might be able to do. And one of the things that I find a bit disconcerting is that we bought into a system that really is not of any benefit to us. And I look around and I see why this so-called, as we all know that there is no such only one race as the Europeans, but as it's currently being classified, the Asians, Chinese, the Koreans, and those other people who are put into that group as being Asian. One reason why they seem to be so successful and they are moving on is that they don't buy into this concept of time and culture. They maintain their culture, their language, and everything. They keep it with them. Because as we look around, we're in this so-called New Year, as people want to call it, celebrating of this New Year, which is based on a Roman Gregorian calendar, and this time, this 2012, that they came up with and saying that this is the time that we're in, which in actuality, we're not. But the Chinese, they keep their New Year, which is coming up, I believe, sometime in February, and other cultures, they maintain their cultures and their time and their system, have their gods that they keep in contact with, and they're moving on, and life is moving on for them, and we seem to be stuck in time and place because we're still depending on the same God and concept that was given to us, enslaved us, and we're still, whether it be Christianity, Islam, Judaism, whatever, it's the same God concept, it's the same characters in the play, in all three parts of this play, that's throughout this trilogy, and we're still following it. So when you were saying about liberation and using these churches, I get very discontent with any church. I don't like to go to a church, period, except maybe if it's a close family member that passed, then I go, a wedding, a dedication, or whatever. But it disgusts me when I hear ministers and when I see them, because they are a total sellout. They have been a disgrace to the whole community. And using any of these police facilities, whether it be the Christian, the mosque, the temple, or a church, to try and proselytize to people, is going to turn a lot of people off, especially people like me. Because I can spot the game before they even start coming with it. You know, can I get an amen? Can I get something from this corner and all this other stuff, you know, kind of patting you to get you some kind of reaction to keep you going. And black people, we're good at this. We're good at going along with the transparency. So I would just like to hear what your take is on this war with this liberation, because I don't see it coming from using any of those sort of buildings. And the AIDS epidemic, we already know that the AIDS is manufactured by this government in order to population tailor up.
But who is the victim of it is what we're dealing with. What it is that your point is well taken. You know, what it is that when you start talking about, like, for example, my concept, the First True Church of African Redemption, we're not really talking about any really catechism in terms of the way we view God. We only use the church because the church has been marketed as a concept so much to our people that we have certain expectations. When you come into my church, you might hear "Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud," and you might have a discussion that's totally rooted in trying to get us to understand our history. In my church, we plan to canonize our saints, people like Marcus Garvey, people like Malcolm X, these kind of people who played a role in our liberation. So even though we're using the terminology church, in no way do we have any belief that, that they're, what it is that you have to communicate in a way where people are able to have a chance to hear you. I could call it something different, but I know that black people have been organized in churches for so long that when you say church, they bring a certain demeanor and a certain type of behavior, and they expect a certain organization, certain structures to be in place when they come in there. Now, my uniqueness comes from the fact that once you get inside, you hear that this is a completely different type of presentation than you would get in a so-called religious church. But it's just a strategy of marketing liberation to our people without them even consciously being aware of the fact that that's what that's about. But I'm certain that once it's actually established, the kind of spirit and the kind of attitude from the type of people that would be attracted to something like that will create a sense of belonging, brotherhood, a sense of community, sisterhood, and family that makes a person want to return, because the conversation for the first time will really be about how can we move forward, solve our problems, and how can we create the kind of spiritual buoyancy that gives our people the kind of character they need to confront this racist society. And it's not just about confronting the racist society, because we know what we're against. It's about what we're trying to build, because my church is dedicated to inspiring our people to build institutions, beginning with the institution of family, beginning with the institution of education on a personal level. So when we come to my church, we're talking about you must educate yourself as to who we are, what our culture is all about, and how you as an individual can make a contribution to the collective. And that's basically how I envision it. And I agree. I'm turned off with the nonsense religions and the silly arguments over which path we should be going on, when all those paths are covered with pitfalls and strategies that lead to our destruction, because that's what the oppressor poisoned these paths with. So I agree with you totally on that, but we have to create a unique expression of organization.
Okay, and one other question I wanted to ask is, when you say the word church, and this is something perhaps you can find a different terminology for whatever it is that you might be wanting to go for, because to me, as I said, there are lots of people out here like me that you use the word church and it completely turns it off. Are we coming from some sort of religious text, what it is that we are using once we get the people gathered together in a building in order for you to, get us into a frame of mind, or Pan-Africanism, or whatever frame of mind we need to be in? What text are we coming from?
Well, we don't. You got to understand, our church is not concerned about. The concern of our church is not concerned about what's happening after you die. We're concerned about what's going on earth. Okay, so what we say is that we are a supplement to whatever religious beliefs you may have, or we are a primary church where you come to organize yourself, because the church really is just a group of people organized around a spiritual objective. So if our church, the purpose of our church is to allow people to have a forum where they can be spiritually recharged to move in the direction towards black empowerment, that's really what it's all about. The thing about it is that I guarantee you that if you were not a person or a person completely turned off with churches, mosques, and synagogues, if you walked into an institution where we have set up this type of framework or this type of service to take place, you would be very pleasantly surprised, and you would be very enthusiastic about what you're experiencing. It's impossible to tell you what this looks like because it hasn't been done yet, but once you saw what it looks like, and once that has been popularized, I think that it could be something that would be very powerful, and it might totally change your mind about, because you got to understand, you have to relate to people, where they are. If I was to call it something else. I don't want to call it a temple for a number of reasons. Most of our people are either Christians in this country or who are either in the church or out of the church. They have some varying levels of understanding of what that's supposed to be about, but they all do understand what the church means. So when you say the first true church of African redemption, we should concentrate on what those words actually mean before we even get to church. We're talking about the first true church. By saying it's the first true church, we're implying that the rest of these churches were never really about pure redemption. That's why we call it the first true church of African redemption, because we're exclusively working toward the redemption of African people. And we say our redemption comes when we embrace Pan-Africanism and we embrace love, acts of kindness, acts of empowerment that aid and assist one another. That's what we're talking about.
Okay, I'll say one other thing, and then I'll get off so someone can get on. When you're saying, when I refer to the word text, religious text, I'm not per se speaking about the Bible, the Quran, or any of those things. I'm speaking about maybe something coming from Dr. Ben or Dr. Clark or Dr. Ben Sertima,
that's
or one of those.
Listen, Henry Clark, Dr. Ben, the philosophies and opinion of Marcus Garvey. You see, part of our catechism is that when you come into our church, we read the inspirational stories of our people who have struggled against oppression and our people who came to try to bring us to a better understanding. We commemorate their lives, we talk about their lives, and we canonize these people as the saints of our church. The first church, the Church of African Redemption, our mission is to canonize people like Marcus Garvey, the Honorable Marcus Garvey, people like, Mary McLeod Bethune, who came to try to bring education. So we want to make our people aware that these are the people that we should be revering. And these are our pantheon of saints. These are the holy people who came and tried to use their spirituality to advance us as a group of people. So that's what we're talking about. So I agree with you. Those are the holy texts that we're speaking from. Because you got to remember, our message is not about what's going to happen to you after you die. We're talking about what you're going to experience, what we can do right here on earth. Okay, that's what we're concerned, on earth as it is in heaven. So we're not wasting our time trying to get you all excited about the afterworld. We're trying to talk to you about what's going on right now, what you can do to try to heal your family life, what you can do to try to empower yourself, what you can do to try to build a sense of brotherhood amongst your people, a sense of sisterhood, a sense of community, a sense of family. Because the people like that, whatever we decide to do, we can do, but we need to be organized, and we cannot ignore the fact that we are a spiritually based people. That's the base at the core of our axiology as a people. Our worldview is that a human being must have that relationship with the Creator. And so we're not going to try to argue against that because it's a waste of time. The mere fact that we argue so much about religion as a people tells you that we are a spiritually based people. But the problem is that we will never achieve liberation trying to unite under one religion. But we can achieve liberation by trying to unite spiritually around the concept of liberating ourselves.
Well, when we use the term religion, religion has nothing to do with spirituality. Those are two foreign and two totally separate entities. We are a spiritual.
We totally agree. Religion is the path, but the goal is really spirituality. And that can take place with organized religion or without organized religion. We agree. There's no disagreement.
Oh, okay. Because what's getting to me is that when we're using this terminology of canonization and saints and all of these things, this is something that is coming out of the Christian dogma. And this is something, it kind of brushes me the wrong way when people use that in the word church, and if perhaps we can find some Yoruba or some kind of African indigenous term to call these concepts and let people know it, because if we try to move away from the European...
We could always evolve to reflect, a greater understanding of our people, but one of the great mistakes you can always make at the beginning of anything is not to relate to the people on a level that they understand. So perhaps, as we go on, we might change the way we might more Africanize the way we make that approach. But the first thing you have to do is you have to get some people to support what you're doing, and you can't get that if you're so far afield that they can't even relate to. People have to be given stuff that they're similar, that they have an understanding of first before you can even move in that direction. So it's like I can say the term black. I spoke extensively about how black is a beginning stage, but you're not going anywhere until you acknowledge the fact that we're an African people. But the point is that I have to use that term at times so that person knows what the hell I'm talking about. Because you have people who've been brainwashed not to understand or to reject Africa. So I can't walk up to a person and say, hey, listen, as an African person, and, you know what I mean, this, that, or the other thing without first explaining to them, you know what I mean, what's actually going on. So, you know, methodology aside, and, you know, because nothing is going to perfectly have perfect symmetry with everybody in the beginning. I know who I'm going after, and I'm going after brothers and sisters who have a very limited understanding. You may be further up the field and understand that down the line, you know, those things may need to be corrected, but you got to start somewhere, and you're not going to attract anybody. There's some people, our people are joiners. Our people will join any kind of church under the sun. Anybody can come, and it's happened. All kinds of charlatans and fakes and phonies have come along and said, I'm the Mahdi, I'm this, I'm that, and now people have, and they've found followers. Our people will follow anything as long as you say that you're with God on some level. So the bottom line is that the difference in our church is that I'm not looking for any financial benefit from any kind of a church. I'm completely self-sufficient. My thing is that, you know, I tell people is that, you know, when a man is really coming from a spiritual perspective, his reward is supposed to be coming from God, and he's not preaching to his people because he's looking for prosperity. And nobody looking for no real money or looking for personal prosperity would even waste their time trying to wake our people up, because most of our people are so dead that they'd rather give their money to a Creflo Dollar than a guy talking about trying to resolve the real problems in their lives as African people. So it's not something that a person gets into because they're looking for money or they want to establish a church because the church is the number one business in Black America. That's not what I'm talking about. Nor are we looking for a system of a church that's centrally controlled. We're saying that you have the ability to start your own church. There should be all kinds of unique churches, all kinds of storefront preachers talking about liberation theology without using the trap of trying to convince a person that there is a particular path that leads to a spiritual connection, and only that particular path should be accepted as the way to go to God. I'm against that. I don't care what a person believes. I believe that we should all be engaged in acts of liberation, acts of connecting spirituality to our liberation struggle as a people.
Well, I could agree with the liberation part that you were speaking, and I'm all for that. It's just that we as a people, we are spiritually bankrupt. That's it in a nutshell, because we have taken on someone else's ideology and we are running with it, which has been repackaged. They took our stuff, repackaged it, and put it in something called religion and give it to us, and we are spiritually bankrupt. That is why we are in this state that we are in, and we just need to connect back with our spirituality, and we will be a right people.
Well, you got to remember when you say that we're spiritually bankrupt, and this is a lot of problems a lot of times what our problem is as a people. We condemn ourselves, not realizing that, you know, there's a thing called form and there's a thing called nature. Okay, I know the nature and the axiology of African people, so I'm confident that when they hear something genuine, they will respond, because I know what's really in them. I know what they're really like. So even though I see us in this corrupted form, I know that that's not who we really are. So the bottom line is that I may see a man who is chemically dependent on drugs. I know that that's the form that he is, but that's not his nature. That's not the way he was born into the world. He wasn't born into the world needing a needle. I know that African people are loving by nature, and when we see them acting other than that, it's because something has acted on them to change their behavior. I know that they are spreading homosexuality amongst our people by using systems that destroy family life and systems that lead to molestation and attacks on our children, and they're creating the kind of hopelessness that makes sisters feel like they can only find companionship in another woman because of what they have done to the black man in this country. I understand that that's those sisters' form, but that may not necessarily be their nature. Their nature may want to be, I want to be with a man, but I've now been convinced that there's no possibility of that happening. So I'm behaving in a way that's contrary to my nature. So a lot of the behavior you see in the black community is not really natural. Okay? So when I speak to our people, I know the true axiology of African people, and I know our true nature as a people. That's why I have every confidence that when you come to them with something real, real people will do real things. And you got to remember, we're not looking for everybody. We're looking for those people who are looking to be spiritually connected to their liberation, or who want the message of inspiration and liberation.
Well, I can agree on that, because that's exactly what we're looking for. As I say, we're looking for liberation, but when we are tuning into someone else's system and trying to use it because it was never designed for us to get something out of it, then that is why we have this frustration. As you said, the person on the needle, there's a reason why these things, they are called spirits, is because it's a foreign entity that comes into you and takes over you. It's not you, it corrupts you. That's why alcohol is referred to as a spirit. These drugs and these other things, they're called ethers and these other things, because it is something totally foreign that comes into you and takes over your nature as this third entity. So I can understand why these people, they're in their condition. I don't ever condemn anybody for being in the condition that they're in, because I don't know what put them there for abuse of the grace of God. It could be me that could be in that position. So I don't ever condemn people for what they are.
Well, I was just saying that we don't want to say that our people are spiritually bankrupt. They're not. What happens is their leaders are not really talking to them in a way that would inspire them spiritually to move toward their liberation. So people can only learn what people can only, man's a creature of influence. If you keep influencing the person to be something other than what he is, you might be able to, you will definitely affect his behavior. So I'm simply saying, when you've been hearing lies and lies and lies and lies, you know what I mean? It's difficult everybody's not going to have an opportunity necessarily to be a deep thinker, because that takes a certain type of financial liberation. It takes a lot of effort, and your mind has to be trained to do the necessary critical analysis in this society to come away with the kinds of conclusions that a healthy-minded black person might have. But you can't, the majority of us don't have that situation. Majority of us are struggling to survive. Majority of us are being trained by mass media influences put out by white supremacists and also misguided African people. A lot of our own people do some of the most destructive things in the world in terms of, you listen to some of these black comedians, you listen to some of these black musicians, and it's a shame how they have abandoned their responsibility to give a message of inspiration and upliftment to the people, and have sold out for a fistful of dollars and a few dollars more. So it's not just them. So the preachers have sold us out. We're in a real mess. And that's why I know it's at these particular times where the truth, which is the only weapon we really got left, the truth can be very, very powerful, because there's nothing like it. You're not hearing any truth in this society as it relates to our people. Not in the way that it should be heard, and not in the not from the number of sources that you should be hearing it from. It's very hard to get truth. Look at the dynamite discussion we're having tonight. This is a discussion that would be wonderful if millions of our people can hear that, but we know that that's not the reality. The information is actually out there, but how do we get that information to the mainstream? And that's why you have to have these kinds of institutions like a church, so that you can be able to inspire individuals on a group level to try to become enlightened around these issues.
I agree with that. When I say bankrupt in a way, I'm not condemning or anyone, because when we come into this life as a child,
I understand what you mean. I was just saying, reacting to that, because a lot of us are in despair, because it is really bad. The condition of the people are really bad, and in frustration, a lot of us will start to say, we start to blame the victim, because we don't realize that our people are so manipulated. Even some of the meanest things that we do, we don't realize that this is the direct byproduct of the kind of society that we live in, and the kind of racism that we've been exposed to. We have been taught to hate ourselves. We've been taught to attack and to denigrate, to attack any positive efforts that our people are making, and to be negative about any of the conclusions that we reach independent of white direction. So there's a lot to overcome. And so, and a lot of us, like I said, if you haven't been frustrated as an African person, you're not really living the experience.
Thank you very much, Gus, and thank you for indulging me, Gus, and I'll let the other callers get a chance.
Brother, I appreciate you, and like I said, you're a strong person, Continue to do what you're doing. And like I said, we're all really united, and we all want the same thing, which is the liberation of our people.
That much I can agree on. And 2012 is a new year, and hopefully we will put a big dent in this liberation movement.
We're going to go to work, brother. We're going to work harder than ever.
Thank you.
You know? Okay, brother.
Context of white supremacy, I wanted to thoroughly enjoy the dialogue around this issue, and I hope it will continue. Hopefully we'll have an opportunity to address this some more on the program. I wanted you to, just around the questions that 404 was just asking, I think that for many black people, and I think especially younger black people, they don't have a conception that the quote-unquote black church can look totally different from the way that it looks now with, you know, many of the figures and the Eddie Long scandal, that it can look totally different. And it can be an environment where you have truth. It can be an environment that is totally about destroying white supremacy. And again, it did look close to that not that long ago. Would it be possible, before we wrap the program up, could you give us a prayer that is focused around black liberation, if that's something you'd be comfortable with, just so we can get an idea of what your church would look and sound like?
Well, in my church, you would walk through the doors and you'd probably hear a processional song like Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud. You might come into our church and you'll see all kinds of beautiful pictures of the African aesthetic, you know, showing the beauty, the cultural beauty of our people, pictures of family life, pictures of Africans in our, you know, African settings and whatnot. You would see pictures of some of our great historical leaders. You would see a pulpit with a guy with a robe with probably some red, black, and green slashes on the side. You might see a congregation that is using, that is singing songs that are relevant to our struggle. A lot of secular songs, or so-called secular songs, that talk about, you know, the common experience of African people. You would hear a lecture where we extol the virtues of the characters of some of the great ancestors that we've had. We would have dialogue around concepts and ideas like Pan-Africanism. We would have a stated philosophy for political organization that basically says we will control our economy as a people. We would have socials like liberation parties where we try to raise funds for brothers and sisters to go into businesses so that they could support themselves, their families, be employers to their community, and be contributors to cultural institutions. You would see drives to build African-centered schools where our history is being taught from our perspective, and science is being explained to our people with respect to our contributions. You would see virtuous behavior being promoted as being educated. We'd be talking about the importance of self-education. We'd be talking about the importance of solid family commitment to children, commitment to the protection of children. We'd be talking about respect for women. We'd be talking about respect for men. We'd be talking about the meaning of African manhood. You know what I mean? The African womanhood. We'd have rites of passages. We'd have all these different things. And we'd also have conversations about repatriation in terms of Africa. We'd have groups talking about visiting Africa and going over there with the understanding that we want to make a contribution. We have, you know, people from all over the African diaspora, actual Africans in our church as well. And so that's what we're looking for. We're looking for a place, a universal umbrella for African people to talk about what the reality has been and also talk about what we can create in response to that reality. You know what I mean? And what we should create to preserve ourselves. All people should have the right to preserve themselves. And, you know, when your culture is, you know, I mean, if we are just going to be, you got to understand something. You know, we take so much direction from European culture. Many of us see it as the dominant culture, and we are a subculture. And you're part of a subculture when you don't have any direction of your own. And that's what a lot of black people who don't have true African consciousness have fallen into. They're part of a subculture where we are like support staff for whatever white folks is doing. So when white folks declare a war, we go. We don't think about the rightness or the wrongness of it. When white folks murder Brother Gaddafi, we don't think about what his contribution has been to Africa and his drive to build the African Union. We don't think about these kinds of things because whatever white folks tell us, this is what we accept. That's what I mean when I say that we are subculture. When they corrupt our music and turn us from a spiritual message in our music to some kind of animalistic sensuality and some kind of disrespectful rap about who we are and something that pushes us toward violence and sexism and all this other kind of stuff, we don't consider these things. So when you talk about our church, we would be addressing these kinds of things, and we'll be coming with a message, really, that's a separatist message. We're saying we need to stop messing with white folks. They don't respect us. They will never respect us. But if we respect ourselves, the world will be forced to respect us. You got to respect somebody. You may not like a person. You may dislike a person, but you have to respect someone that respects themselves. And that's what we're trying to achieve, black self-respect.
Could we, if you're comfortable, could we get a prayer to close out the program for Black Liberation?
Well, the prayer is that all of us in this new year will dedicate ourselves to recharge our battery towards moving in a direction toward liberation and self-determination. We ask the Creator to strengthen our understanding, to give us the will to reject lazy behavior that leads us into that keeps us in a situation where we're not even moving forward. We want to be inspired. We want to be energetic. We want to be loving. We want to embrace who we are as a people, and we want to take up our sacred mission to liberate ourselves and to bring more justice into this world. I can't solve the problems of the world, but I can contribute to solving the world's problems by solving the problems of my people. My people need love, and love is about justice, and love is about fairness, and love is about dignity, love is about righteousness. And so we ask the Creator to bless all our people all over the world to recognize that He has given us a special burden, okay? As the foundational people of the world, it says, the first shall be the last, and the last shall be the first. Well, when the last become the first, that's about the liberation of the African people, because we certainly were the first. And right now, the first has become the last, and now the last must become the first. And we ask the Creator to bless everybody and to strengthen all of us in our understanding, because none of us know everything, but I do know that if you love your people, that can never be wrong. May God bless everybody, and thank you for the time.
NubianDirections.com, Mr. C.C. Blackman, the book Towards the Destruction of a Nigger Mentality. Thoroughly enjoyed the dialogue, sir. Thank you so much for sharing some of your Sunday evening with us. We definitely look forward to having you back on the program soon and wish you the best with your efforts working against white supremacy, establishing the church. Folks said it's going to be a cyber church to start out with. If you're online, check it out, see what he has to say, and I definitely think we can make some progress turning religion against white supremacy. Thoroughly enjoyed it, Mr. Blackman.
Thank you so much,
Bye.
brother. I appreciate the invitation as always.
Sure. Take good care, sir. We'll speak with you soon.
All right. Peace.
Good evening. Context of white supremacy. We'll be right back. I see folks on the line. If folks have questions, comments, interesting idea in the chat room. If anyone has questions, comments, I'll come back and check the phone lines once the commercial is done. We also have a segment from the BBC, some white people in the area of the world known as France. I believe they have adopted a gorilla. I'll just leave it at that. You'll hear the audio clip after the commercial. Context of white supremacy. We will be right back. 2 seconds. We'll be right back.
RacismDaily.com, your number one source for global news reports on race, racism, and overt actions of white supremacy. From Asia to the Americas to Europe to Australia to Africa, racism is not a thing of the past, it is our current reality. Be informed, be globally informed. You should be the first to know. RacismDaily.com, RacismDaily.com, RacismDaily.com.
Is racism hurting you? On issues of race, are you unable to speak, think, and act with clarity and confidence? Are you tired of laughing when nothing is funny, smiling when you are not happy, agreeing when you really disagree? At counterracism.com, you can learn specific strategies and techniques to counter the behaviors of the people who practice racism in all areas of activity, using words correctly, following counter-racist logic, even counter-racist science projects designed to reveal what racism is, how it works, and how to counter it. The open source code writing format allows you to pick and choose from a variety of counter-racist suggestions so you can produce the code that works for you. Stop by counterracism.com today and help replace racism with justice.
That's counter-racism.com.
Do you need a one-stop shop for all of your multimedia needs? Triumphant Multimedia is a skilled team of professionals with a passion for great marketing and chic design. Our specialties include consulting, brand development, copywriting, and creative graphic design that's second to none. We also offer photography, photo retouching, videography, and video editing. At Triumphant Multimedia, our goal is to provide highly effective creative solutions built to suit any individual need or budget. Give us a call at 678-732-8067 or check us out online at trimultimedia.com.
Hi everybody, welcome. This is Justice with the C.O.W.S radio program. If you want to learn about, understand, and counter racism, white supremacy, be sure not to miss a C.O.W.S episode. We keep them jam-packed with constructive information to sharpen your use of words to help eliminate the system of racism, white supremacy, ASAP. Also, for more information on racism, white supremacy, and to invest in my counter-racist efforts, please visit my blog, justdojustice.blogspot.com.
You're just saying just buckets and buckets of words.
Yo, this is Wade, one half of the Black Twins. I want y'all to check something out. Our latest project, Double Consciousness, the Mixed Message. This will be dropping October 2nd, 2011, featuring various audio from Umar Abdullah Johnson and Dr. Ken Baum, just to name a few. You can download this at www.gagmusicroom.bandcamp.com and at stlouismixtapes.com. That's STLmixtapes.com. Replace white supremacy with justice now.
This mixtape is only for victims of racism and white supremacy.
I would just like to give Justice a standing ovation. Justice is a whole lot better at handling folks than I am. And I am a grown person, and she's a child still. And I just want to just give her a standing ovation. She is just absolutely cool under all kinds of heat, and I just look up to her, and I just hope she continues, and she's going to be something else, man, in the future, man. I think she's going to be just too much for any of them. So, Justice, if you're listening, big up to you, sister.
You're just saying just buckets and buckets of words.
This is Digit on her daily job. The 13-year-old female gorilla spends the day entertaining young visitors at this zoo in France. But at the end of the day, Digit goes home to mom and dad. Meet Pierre and Eliane Tivillon, both zoo managers who have adopted the gorilla and take her home with them every night.
It's going very well because we have a 13-year-old relationship with Digit. So obviously we have created a very strong bond with each other.
The childless couple took the 120 kilograms gorilla when her biological mother refused to breastfeed her. And although they already had some experience of raising a gorilla, taking care of Digit is not an easy job. So no more night outs for this couple, who say that Digit likes sleeping in their bed and receiving lots of attention from her adoptive parents. Liliette Heredero, BBC News.
Context of white supremacy. The report that you just heard, that was on the BBC yesterday, December 31st. It was reported on the BBC. Three quick things that jumped out. White people and their inability to have children, fertility rates. I think that's been touched on before. That could be a part of the creator trying to correct this problem and get rid of white people. Second thing, them saying that the gorilla enjoys sleeping in their bed. This is the sort of story, if you've been listening to the cows, this sort of report, sort of information, if you have a better understanding of white supremacy and how white people behave, you should immediately be thinking bestiality. I strongly suspect that these white people are doing something sexually incorrect with Bridget, the gorilla. Strongly. Last thing, I've been talking about the gorilla and how her mother would not breastfeed the gorilla, I guess, when she was younger. White people cause those sorts of disruptions worldwide, universally. Their system is designed to corrupt relationships between people, especially to assault family structures worldwide. Just three quick things that jumped out at me in that report. It's on the BBC. You can read it. They have more information about it. You can see the video footage of the white people frolicking with this gorilla. And, bestiality. Before I check the phone lines, Jeff, did you have anything you wanted to share?
I do want to say that white people, is it white people that is doing that stuff to the gorilla?
Yes, ma'am.
Man, that is real tough. I think that white people, I think that white people are the ones who made up this bestiality stuff, and they do it a lot. And I think that very few share on the news and stuff like that. There are many white people that do that stuff to many animals, including hamsters and squirrels. I mean, and bears and all sorts of things. I mean, it's not just those white people that you just heard, but I mean, it's many, and you should always keep your guard up.
With white people, keep your guard and your pants up. Man.
That's funny.
They will rape anything. Squirrels, rabbits, rodents, gorillas, anything. I think Cynical African, he was saying they were raping vehicles. There were some YouTube videos where they were doing sexual things with automobiles. So, yeah, anything.
Really?
That's what he said. Cynical African.
That's crazy.
That's white people. The history of white people. Sexual deviance. Again, the history of white people. Anything else you want to add, Justice?
It's just nasty. That's just gross. I mean, who would ever do that? I mean, just gross.
Not anomalous behavior either. I'll make sure I get that in before I hit the phone lines. There are tons of stories of white people having gorillas and all sorts of animals living with them in their bed. If folks remember, in 2009, there was a woman, I think she was in New England, a white woman who had a gorilla that she used to feed lobster. Same thing. She used to sleep in the bed with it. The same thing. And it escaped, and white people ended up killing the gorilla because he revolted against her. I don't know if folks remember that, but 2009, they had a big to-do about it when they, I think the gorilla ripped the white woman's face off. That might have been the creator responding right there, too. But yeah, she had to have also plastic reconstructive surgery in this. But they killed the gorilla, bottom line. They killed the gorilla and were sympathizing with the suspected racist white female, at any rate.
Was the white... Okay, so the white female was doing inappropriate stuff to the gorilla in 2009?
I'm not sure if it was reported, whether or not she was doing something incorrect. What they reported was that she pampered the gorilla, that she was feeding him lobster. I'm not sure if it was a male or female. She was feeding the gorilla lobster and allowing it to sleep in bed with her and eating dinner together with the gorilla. They didn't report whether she was doing something sexually incorrect or harming the gorilla. They just reported when it escaped, and they and attacked her, and then they ultimately had to kill the gorilla.
I think that the gorilla did something correct. Because, I don't think gorillas even eat lobsters, and, they do not sleep in bed with humans, or maybe not humans, but people. But, yeah, they do not do that, and, yeah. So, woohoo for the gorilla, so.
For sure. Anything else, Justice?
No. I don't think so. I don't have anything up in my mind right now.
Right on. I will check the phone lines, see if anybody has anything else they would like to share. We will be back tomorrow. Program Mr. Tony Riddick, black male. He was a recommendation from Dr. Kanban. He does a lot of research on eugenics and the long history of in the area of the world, North Carolina. They had a long-running campaign of sterilization of females, many of them black. They are currently seeking reparations for many of the victims, compensation for the way that they were horribly abused by white people. Mr. Riddick, he'll be on the program tomorrow evening, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Again, recommended from Dr. Kanban. If any of the folks that are on the line, if you have questions or comments, I think 404, your line should be open. Female caller, 5407, your line should be open as well. Anybody else, if you have questions or comments, if you're on the Free HD line, *6. If you have questions, if you're on the TalkShoe line, *8. One thing I will say, the church aspect, I definitely, and I've just been thinking about this of late, go back and look at those Eyes on the Prize films. I'm not saying that everything can be recreated and that the conditions are the same, but I definitely think the opportunity is ripe. You've got, the church is rife with everything but constructive focus on white supremacy. You've got pedophilia, sex of all sorts of just zany behavior going on in black churches across the Northwestern Hemisphere, probably across the world. I think it would not be much of a stretch if you had some folks going to different churches, black churches, and just making an effort to quietly infiltrate and see if you can redirect the focus to replace white supremacy with justice. I wouldn't go in, immediately, we're going to take the white Jesus down first day. I wouldn't go in with that focus, but I definitely think you could have that as a counter-racist exercise, program, experiment, timetable. How long do I think it would take for me to get this congregation to get that white Jesus down? I probably wouldn't even have in mind to replace it with a black Jesus, but just get the white Jesus down. Even before we get to that, what are some activities we could be doing that would kind of get people to rethink What are we doing with our time and energy? Let's see if we can do some things that are constructive, working towards being very explicit about, hey, we should be about replacing white supremacy with justice. If Eddie Long can be in the church running wild and using it as a harem for 16-year-old males, I definitely think, hey, we can redirect this to let's focus on white supremacy. I'm not a big fan of church. I wasted a lot of time there. We were not focused on this, but I definitely think it could be possible. And it has been. That's the thing. Not that long ago, it was. If this program existed in the 1960s, we would have had to go to church. Would have wanted it. Wouldn't even have been, dragging someone kicking and screaming. You would have wanted to go if you were interested in racism, white supremacy, because that's where it was happening. The black church. Nat Turner to Malcolm X, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., however people feel about him, the counter-racist hub has been the black church. I think it can be again. And really, I think the bottom line is just about connecting the Creator. Our purpose for being in existence has got to be, if we're in a universe dominated by white supremacy, the Creator had to put us here to solve that problem. And just making an effort, just rethinking about what church is supposed to be about. Time, the Creator giving us the will and ability, dedication to replacing white supremacy with justice. I think church can, it has been, and it can be about that again. Just an idea to think about. 404, last four digits, 5407. Your lines are open. Anybody else, if you have comments, questions, just press star 8 if you're on TalkShoe, star 6 if you're on the Free HD line. Anything you all wanted to add?
Well, this is B-More, 5407. I'll be listening tomorrow. I won't get home till about 8 or so. I just wanted to know, I moved to North Carolina about 7 months ago. How exactly were they sterilizing these females?
Mr. Riddick should be able to give us more detailed information about it tomorrow, to my knowledge. Hang on. White people and their excessive noise. To my knowledge, a lot of it was being deceptive. They would get particularly black females, and they did this. This included some white females as well who were involuntarily sterilized. But the primary procedure would be once you get access to them, either if they've come to a hospital for something else or some other procedure, there would be words used to deceive the black females, and a lot of these victims were very young. They were in their teens, so they would use words to deceive them and or their parents in tricking them about what they were signing. They would give them the consent forms, and they would trick them about what they were signing, and it was really a form to sterilize the patient, but they didn't understand that or they didn't know that. A lot of, some of this, I won't say a lot, some of this also happened, it would be tied to social services where a black person or whomever would be coming to get benefits, and they would make it a part of the contingencies to them getting the benefits would be tied to, you can't have any more children, some form of voluntarily, I can't even say voluntarily, some form of coerced sterilization. We'll get into more details about that tomorrow, but I think Dorothy Roberts' book, her second book, I'll get the title. She was on the program in July of last year, and she has extensive, actually her first two books, Killing the Black Body, that's her first book. She was on in August of 2009 to discuss that. She goes into a lot of detail about this practice because it didn't just happen in North Carolina. This happened all across the country, California, Virginia, tons of states, even globally this was happening to non-white people and still is. But her first book focuses on this, Dorothy Roberts, Killing the Black Body, her second book as well. But those are two of the main ways that I'm remembering, by deception, being very tricky with words once you got the black patient in the hospital, and coercing victims. You get these benefits, social services and what have you, you can't have any more children. Those are two of the ways that I know, two of the primary ways that I know of, and hopefully Mr. Riddick will give us some more tomorrow.
Thank you.
And also, Gus, what they were doing is terming, for instance, if you were a young black female and you were raped and became impregnated, it was automatically grounds for you to be sterilized, or if you were considered to be slow, as they call it, then they would sterilize you as well. Whatever that slowness is supposed to mean in white people's definition. Gus, could you see about getting Harriet Washington? We know we speak a lot about her books on the show. Have you ever done an interview with her? With her medical apartheid?
I told 909. I think it's Harriet Washington. There's a white person and Dr. Claude Anderson, where I get requests for them like once a month at least. I have been doing email tag with Harriet Washington for, I'm not sure, about close to 2 years. We've been doing email tag trying to get a date nailed down to do a program, and she's been busy. She just published a new book. I'm going to continue to be persistent, and hopefully we'll make it happen.
Okay. I heard her in a few shows on XM, and it's really atrocious what we have been used as in this country, black women as well as black men, as far as the perfection of their medical system, and still being used as medical system, especially that white female that wrote that book for Henrietta Lacks. She might be someone else that you might want to get on the show and help to debunk this theory that people always have that white people are so great, because she wrote that book about with the helo cells and what they have done to that woman. She was from Virginia, your neck of the woods, tobacco farmer, and what they did with that woman, took her cells and never told the family about it and had her in a lab for all these years and making all sorts of products, and the family never knew that they did this thing with their mother's cells. One of her children passed on the latter part of last year.
I think her name is Rebecca Skloot. I have been doing emails with her as well. I need to follow up on that. I'm going to make an effort to get her on as well. I think that would be very important information.
How is Mr. Nero? Have you been able to get in contact with him, you or Justice, to see how he's doing?
He emailed me on Friday. He was talking about Planet of the Apes, Rise of the Planet of the Apes, the most recent one, and he was saying that he felt the message that the film was communicating to racist man and racist woman is that the black male is about to be out of here. We have got him on locks, and we are about to do a job on black males. He didn't elaborate on exactly what he saw. There's a plane going over here. He didn't elaborate on what he saw specifically. Wow. Sorry about that. Yeah, he didn't elaborate on exactly what he saw in the film that made him come to that conclusion. I did contact him. I followed up with him to see if he would go into more detail about it. Maybe he'll dial in and share, or maybe he'll email me and I can read it on the program. But yeah, he emailed me on Friday about Planet of the Apes.
Okay. Oh, you said you had a clip from Dr. Cambon. Are you going to play tonight?
I can.
Okay, because I thought you were going to play last night before you signed off.
Yeah, I can. I didn't play it yesterday because it's about 10 minutes, and I felt the dialogue was important when Sir Anton called in to share about what happened at the restaurant. And again, I'm hoping we can make that happen this week or sometime in the next 5 days, getting them on to talk about what happened, being terrorized by a gang of white people. But yeah, I thought that was important, and the sound clip, it's about 10 minutes, so I didn't want to break up the conversation to get the sound clip in. Camille Yarbo got her contact information. We'll be seeing if we can get her on the program soon as well. Someone suggested her a while back also.